Ray. What do you want to do tonight?
The same thing we do every night, Pinky. Try to take over the world.
All right, yo, let's get into it.
Try to take over the world.
Preaching freedom.
Try to take over the world.
And greatest chaplain in the world, Mr.
Try
Lance
to
O'Neill.
take over the world.
Hey, yo, what it do, world? We are here. It is Sunday evening. Do you know where your pogues are? Yo, we are back in the building for another beautiful, beautiful week. What up, Chappie? How you doing?
I'm just going to sit here like Trump for the next 45 minutes and just bop along to the music.
Just bop all to the music, man. Listen, I will tell you, that is some awkward dancing. I need my boy to figure life out, because who the hell bops the Ave Maria? I have no idea. Like, I was like, man, come on, bro. Like, I got you, but that is some weird bopping, brother. Whatever. You know, I don't knock the flow.
Yeah. So Saturday Night Live has really degraded over the years, but they did a little clip. And obviously it was much harder on Trump than it was on Harris. But then Colin Joe said, and now here's a clip of President Trump dancing along to music at his own rally in a very real clip. And they showed 3 different clips of it. I haven't watched it. And because I know what happened. And then I watched it and I went, okay, yeah, bit awkward, bit weird. Not as weird as some of the other stuff, but that
was, I saw it, and it was painful to watch. And I was like, man, somebody, like, I don't know what's going on, but like, get my boy some help, man. He is hurting. So
here's the problem with Trump. Trump could have gotten away with it. And this is why I don't understand certain things like that, because he's a smart guy. He's the smartest guy ever. He's got a huge brain. At the end of that 30 minutes, let's say they weren't going to do anything else in that rally, but the sound system was, and he walked up to the mic. He said, you know, I know that was awkward. I was just seeing what I could do to get away with, just because I love you all. And I wanted to see if you loved being here enough, just being with me. And I want to say thank you. I was just saying if I could do it. That people always talk, what could I do? I just did it just to see. So thank you. I just wanted to prove the point to Democrats that my crowds will stay here, even if I just stand on this stage and bop along to the music. And every seat that would have, so you would have had the left freak out. Oh, he manipulated his own crowd. And every Republican or everybody who's a MAGA would have been like, yep, I would have stayed there too.
It would have worked.
It would have. It's like the throwaway lines in science fiction movies. My favorite throwaway line in any science fiction movie of all time is, I think it's Transformers 3. And it's the one where Leonard Nimoy voices the other Prime. Now, I'm not a huge fan of the Transformers movies. I liked the cartoon back in the day when I grew up on the cartoon. But there's a part where they're saying, we're going to bring Cybertron from where it is here to Earth, and we're going to use all the Earthlings as slave labor to fix Cybertron. And we're going to use it using these pylons. And here was the throwaway line. This is beyond your physics. I was like, I'm in. Okay.
All right, man. So, before we dive in, we had a very interesting episode last week that got social media interested, shall we say.
Near viral. More bacterial than viral.
Yeah, lots of robust conversations happened, and that's great. And then we got the usual
Crackpots.
Yeah.
KJ, you should know better. You're black.
Yeah, the usual revolutionaries.
That is still my favorite comment of all time. You should know better.
I promise you, I have no idea how that works, man. How you can take a 1 minute clip of a 2-hour podcast and just say that, you have betrayed your entire race is beyond me. But I
by
digress.
having a conversation about race.
And that's the whole thing.
What was the new one? What was the one? We're just two cucks or something, just talking.
Yeah. We're two twinks.
Tweaks. That was it.
Yeah,
well, thank you, whoever wrote that. How did you know?
This week, two twinks this week. I was like, that's new. I was like, that's cool.
I don't know all the labels in the gay community, but I'm pretty sure neither of us would qualify as a twink. I'm pretty sure you'd qualify as a bear. I don't know what I would qualify as.
I'm not even sure what that means. That is some.
So,
bear.
A big hairy guy is called a bear.
Ah.
I know too. So I've got a good friend Facebook friend in San Francisco, who's very much in that community. And so, and you watch different movies and stuff. And so I've learned, I don't remember, but there are some very specific kind of labels for the different.
So you just, all right. So
of gay men, I guess would be a way to put it.
I have to go ask my wife and be like, hey, honey, am I a bear? Be like, do I qualify as a bear? She's going to look at me like, Arr. That might be something I have to add to the date night repertoire.
not unless you're going to introduce something you don't want to introduce to it.
All right, this is getting way ahead. All right, let's get to it. So we're 16 days out, plus or minus, right? And things are getting hot and heavy. Both of the candidates and the teams are making a mad dash. We got 3 major topics this week. We are gonna jump right into it. Which way we want to go? We got 3 things, three big things we can talk about.
Dealer's call. Dealer's choice.
You know what? I like the Fox interview. Let's do the Fox interview. Cool. All right, so we're gonna start with the Fox clip. So let's get it queued up. Here we go.
Vice President.
So you're not Joe Biden, you're not Donald Trump, but nothing comes to mind that you would do differently?
Let me be very clear. My presidency will not be a continuation of Joe Biden's presidency. And like every new president that comes into office, I will bring my life experiences, my professional experiences, and fresh and new ideas. I represent a new generation of leadership. I, for example, am someone who has not spent the majority of my career in Washington, D.C.
Your campaign slogan is a new way forward, and it's time to turn the page. You've been vice president for 3.5 years, so what are you turning the page from?
Well, first of all, turning the page from the last decade in which we have been burdened with the kind of rhetoric coming from Donald Trump that has been designed and implemented to divide our country and have Americans literally point fingers at each other.
Madam Vice President, more than 70% of people
that is
tell
about
pollsters,
turning the page on rhetoric that people are frankly exhausted of, Brett.
You've been in office for 3.5 years.
And Donald Trump has been running for office.
But you've been the person holding the office.
Come on.
Madam
you
Vice
and I
President.
both know what I'm talking about. You and I both know what I'm talking about.
I actually don't. What are you talking about?
What I'm talking about is that over the last decade, people have become...
I think I'm muted, though.
Listen, over the last decade, it is clear to me, and certainly the Republicans who are on stage with me, the former chief of staff to the president, Donald Trump, former defense secretaries, national security advisor, and his vice president, one, that he is unfit to serve, that he is unstable, that he is dangerous.
Madam Vice President, they're wrapping me very hard
dangerous
here.
to their careers because he could indict
I hope
every
you
single
got
one
to
of them.
say what you wanted to say about Donald Trump. There are a lot of things.
There's more to say. I have much more to say.
Madam Vice President,
and
they're giving me a hard rap.
Well, I thank you for the time.
I did make a mistake, and I want to say that I did make a mistake. When I called for a soundbite, I was expecting a piece of the enemy from within, from Maria Bartiromo's interview, to be tied to the piece from your town hall, Harris, where you asked the former president about the enemy from within. It just had the piece about the town hall, and just take a listen to what I meant to roll.
I think the bigger problem is the enemy from within. Not even the people that have come in and destroying our country. We have some sick people, radical left lunatics. And I think they're and it should be very easily handled by, if necessary, by National Guard, or if really necessary, by the military.
Trump has
all of this money
has treated
that
and
has
talked
gone
about
in the
America's
past few
military
years.
and military service people,
Critics
calling
say
them
that it goes to
suckers and
Hezbollah,
losers,
Hamas,
has diminished
and
the
Houthis. We're
significance.
talking over each other. I apologize.
So a lot of that. So that kind of goes into. I'll run it back. So, what are your thoughts?
Okay, there was a lot there.
Yeah, I
There was
just
a lot there.
grabbed a couple of highlights from. I think the
No,
interview
that's
ended
fine.
up being about 28 minutes before they ended up cutting it off. Harris's team had to.
I don't think it was even 20. I think it was 28 minutes into the hour, but they didn't start for 10 minutes. She was like 15 minutes late to the interview, according to Bear. But two things. She said a few things that really stuck out to me. The first one was when Bear, and maybe not chronological order, but first one for now is when she said, or Bear started off and said, "What are we turning the page from? You've been in office for the last 3.5 years." And she says, "Yeah, but Trump's been running for president for 10 years. Talk about living in somebody's head rent free. This is not a campaign, the Harris campaign, that is running to promote Harris. Her tagline for her campaign should probably be anybody but Trump. And I really think that that's legitimately how they're doing this. And I think it's a very, very poorly run campaign. She skipped the Al Smith dinner, which is a long-standing tradition for both parties. They go in and they kind of have a little break 3 or 4 weeks before the stretch run of the election, and they can kind of poke fun of each other. They can decompress a little bit, and they can raise a lot of money for charity in the New York area. And if you were watching it, and I did, I watched the monologue by Jim Gaffigan, and then I watched the Trump stuff, and some of it's funny, some of it isn't. A couple of lines were really funny. But she's sitting there and she's saying, well, we need to turn the page from all the bad rhetoric. Her side of the aisle has been calling Trump an existential threat to this country. If you know what the word existential means, it means existence. They are claiming and have claimed that he is a threat to democracy, that this country cannot survive another Trump term, that he will shred the Constitution and become a dictator. And I was listening to Stephen Miller, I think Stephen L. Miller, a little bit of his podcast. And he said, I would love for Bret Baier to ask this question. When you say former President Trump is going to come in and rip up the Constitution and become a dictator, what does that look like? Because do you think that the military is all just going to go, oh, well, he's the dictator now. Okay, we'll just follow him. And the people in Congress are all going to go, oh, well, he walked across the street and ripped up the Constitution. Guess there's nothing we can do. And the Supreme Court's all going to go, gosh darn it. He said he's a dictator now, so I guess we can't do anything either. It's such a ridiculous premise that, and nobody calls the Democrats out on it. How exactly does he become a dictator? I don't see how he could. I think that there are things he pushes, and some of the things that they are worried about, like going after their political opponents. We've already seen that against Trump. The Democrats and the left do it against Trump, including the New York case. And if you haven't followed the New York case, the New York fraud case basically was Trump was found guilty in $500 million judgment, and it got up to the Court of Appeals, and the Court of Appeals basically said, hey, show us an example where this has ever happened before, where somebody has borrowed money, they paid back the money, and who they borrowed it from has no problem with how they borrowed the money and that they gave them the money and that they're willing to give the money again. And the prosecutors were like, they couldn't find anything. So by the end, by the closing arguments, the court had basically said, tell us why we shouldn't censor you guys and hold you accountable for this, because there's nothing here. It's never been done before. There's nobody got hurt. The bank said, look, we know he overvalued this. Everybody, that's part of the game. We have no problem. So the politics of the arrest or of the charges. The Harris campaign, from what I've seen, is burning through money with all the ads, as is the Trump campaign. Now, I'm in Georgia, so my younger brother is in Utah, and I have a family member in Texas, and I or a good friend who's in Texas, and I mentioned, all these political ads. And he goes, I don't get any of those. So I was like, oh, yeah, I'm in Georgia. You're in Texas. I guess that's why you don't get them. But all of the ads that I've seen, they just don't seem smart for the Harris campaign. There's been a few Trump commercials that I was like, ooh, that's going to hurt. The transgender one, phenomenal. Yeah. As far as political campaigns go, it's a brilliant ad, because what it says is it took her own words of saying she's going to give allow sex change for every inmate, and it's a right and all this stuff. And even though it's such a small issue, like realistically, the money that's involved is a budget dust, is what they call it in the Army. It's nothing, but it's such a decisive issue because of what's been going on the last 2-3 years between bathrooms, between the drag queen library hour and all that stuff. It's such a smart wedge issue that costs Trump nothing, because like realistically, I think the average Democrat kind of agrees that they've gone way too far. A lot of the homosexual community thinks it's gone way too far in the trans, because it's killing off an entire generation of gay kids. It's no longer, hey, you're just gay. It's you're trans. And so it's ruining just normal kids that happen to be gay. And she goes on Bear, and this is the first time that I've seen an interview where she answers a question or starts to answer, and the interviewer doesn't allow a filibuster. So Madam Vice President, what do you think about this? And she starts going, oh, no, hold on. That's not what let me clarify what I'm asking here. And she just keeps rambling. And we've seen that multiple times with it. I was just born in a middle-class family. It's become a joke. I'm from the middle class. And the second one is he actually followed up on questions and said, well, I don't think that's exactly what I'm asking, or that's not really right, or let me clarify. And she has not done that. And there's rumors that Trump and Harris may go on Joe Rogan. I think Trump would do extremely well on Rogan. I do. I think Trump is a guy who he can, to some degree, off the cuff, and he'll make things wrong. He'll say things wrong, and he'll make things up like every politician does. I love the whole Trump lies. Yeah, they all do. Guess what? Newsflash. I don't think Harris can last on Rogan. I don't think she has the depth, which is really interesting, because you hear time and time again, and you said this too, KJ, as a prosecutor, when people talk about she's a dummy, it's very difficult for me to believe that she's unintelligent. Because while I do agree with everybody else, there's, if you have the time and the money, you can go through school, you can get a master's. Some people get doctorates I've met some very dumb people who have PhDs. So she could do that, but then to get the job, and even with the political connections, you have to have a level of intelligence to do certain things. And I don't know how much is an act and how much is real. How much is she dumbing herself down so that she doesn't come off as much as a San Francisco liberal? I heard, and I reference Eric Weinstein a lot on this, because I'm really impressed by the guy. And he mentioned how if you go back and you watch the gubernatorial debates that George W. Bush was in, he sounded very smart, and he kind of came off as an intellectual. And because he did it that way, he got elected governor in Texas. But then when he ran for president, suddenly his he got a lot more of that accent, and it's nuclear. And Weinstein was like, do you really think George W. Bush doesn't know how to pronounce nuclear? Of course he knows it's not nuclear, but it made him folksy. It made him a little more down to earth, because if you start looking at who W really was, W's not a folksy guy. His dad was not only president, he was the head of the CIA, or at least high up in the CIA. They have ties back through Yale, through the Skull and Bones frat, or whatever that's called, back and back. That is old school money. That is old school power and influence. So to think that George, and the irony, if you ever go back and read it, like George kind of ticked HW off, because that was supposed to be Jeb. Jeb was supposed to run first.
Yeah.
And Jeb was supposed to become the president first, and then it was supposed to go to George, or to W, I mean. So there was a little bit of, wait a minute, he's not playing the script out. But think of the arrogance of that family to go, no, you weren't. It was supposed to be your brother first.
Wait your turn. Yeah, wait your turn.
Yeah, wait your turn. Not, hey, we hope you both have the opportunity. It was wait your turn. So I wonder if part of that is what's going on with Harris. She cannot, I don't think she can be her authentic self, because, and people won't like this, because I think her authentic self is probably a snooty daughter of two intellectuals who both taught at university, professors. Word salad. Well, word salad is used in a way, I wonder how much she uses it in a way to purposefully not get pinned down. I think you and I have talked offline. Her dad was a professor at Stanford, an economics professor, specifically Marxist economics. And if you don't know what Marxist economics means, it means communist economics. Marxism is communism. And I have a hard time believing that her dad's thoughts and teachings didn't influence her to a significant degree, because you look at her record, she's very, very liberal, the most liberal senator. And I'll finish with this from that clip. She said, well, I haven't spent my entire career in Washington. Okay, but you spent 8 years in the Senate, now 4 years in the White House. Before that, you were a attorney general of the largest state in America. While that's not Washington, it's sure not just working at a law firm or a business. And former President Trump has spent a combined total of 4 years in government. And you can say, well, yeah, he's been running for 10 years. It doesn't matter. He was in the seat for 4 years, and that's it. So I don't think that's a winning strategy. Some of her talking points, I'm curious, and that's another criticism that people have of her, and I do as well, is her answers are seemingly talking points. And that's why I think this threw her off. I would be very, very curious if she went on Rogan, if she could handle it, simply because Rogan's not going to answer questions that can be talking point questions. And he would throw stuff out there that just crazy stuff. Like, you don't think Rogan at some point, let's say, how long is she going to be on there? An hour or two? She's going to be on right up. She would be on. Well, let me just real quick.
Go ahead.
If she's on Rogan, she stands up and walks off the minute Rogan says, so what was your relationship with Willie Brown? And Rogan would ask it.
Why does that matter? That'd be no different than asking Trump what was his relationship with Stormy Daniels. Like,
and I would hope that Rogan would ask that.
Like, what does it matter?
Do you think?
Well,
character matters. Part of it's character.
Does it really?
I think that.
Honestly, so here's the thing, though. Here's the thing. It doesn't matter, right? She at this point, it doesn't matter. If people are going to honestly say, well, I can't vote for Kamala Harris because she slept with Willie Brown, but will turn around and willingly vote for Donald Trump, their issue isn't an issue of promiscuity right?
I absolutely agree. But
So,
what I'm saying is, but what I'm saying is, I think when you're talking about the entire picture, why is it unfair? And again, Trump has been asked about Stormy Daniels over and over, and if she dodges the question, she dodges the question. She's under no obligation to answer any question, right? Even this first one that Brett Baer asked, how many illegals? She never answered that question.
but she was a single woman. Like she was a single woman. Why does who she sleep with as a single woman any consequence to any man? That is such
you really want to know
question. Yeah, that is such an asinine question.
Because if the person you're sleeping with is married and breaks up the marriage, but that's the secondary one. But the bigger one is that Willie Brown appointed her to a cush job, a government job that paid something like $80,000 or $90,000 a year. She had no background in that field. It was something to do with like retirement funds. It was a job that they generally assign people who are it's kind of like that in the military when you've got like 18, 19 years and they're like, hey, we know you need to get to 20 years. So we're going to stick you over here in this kind of cushy admin job where you're not really going to do a whole lot, but you're going to.
She had the qualifications for the job, though, Lance. Did she meet the qualification? She had the degree. She's got a doctorate.
But what?
Doctorate.
She what? Wait,
she what? She has a doctorate.
In what?
Huh?
In what?
Let me go pull up her education. Because when she got elected to, we're talking about her attorney general position, right?
Well, that's a law degree. That's not a doctorate.
So now we're gonna jump into the weeds on this, right?
Oh no, well that's fine. If she's I can guarantee you right now she doesn't have a doctorate. You know why? You know why I can guarantee that? Because they would be insisting on calling her Dr. Harris, just like they do Dr. Biden.
I doubt it. But
so that is to say a Juris Doctorate, and I'm surprised. Is a Juris Doctorate the same as a PhD? I thought a Juris Doctorate was a law degree.
We're gonna jump into this. Because
Thad has it on. Thad has it up.
Yeah, he said it's a Juris Doctorate. But we're gonna jump into this. So because I want to.
I might be ignorant on this, and so if that's what it
is, because I want to get to the because we're gonna end this. Everybody keeps saying that she was handed a job for sleeping with a guy, but here's the issue that we were worrying about.
She was 30 years. She was like 30 years younger than everybody else that was in that position. Like it was a board, and they were all old geriatrics, and she got given this cush job. So.
Nepotism happens every day in this country.
Absolutely.
That's what I'm saying. Yeah. So my point is, why is this an issue? Why is that an issue? Like Trump.
Okay.
Here's my thing, right? So here's my thing, right?
People have brought that up all the time about Trump.
Yeah, but here's my thing, though, right? We got a president. We got a POTUS that people are staunchly behind, right? This guy had an entire wife, right? An entire wife. Cheated on his wife with an immigrant, right?
Multiple times.
Yeah. Brought he's anti-immigrant. Cheated on a wife with an immigrant, brought her over, gave her status, cheated on her for another immigrant, and is still anti-immigrant. And then on top of that, made this
anti-illegal immigrant. If you pull the strings,
he was illegal. They didn't.
Who was?
Neither one of his wives. The second or the third one.
How did he get them over if they were illegal?
I
know. I'm serious. I don't know the history of marriages. So the first
his wife just became a citizen. His wife just became a citizen. When did his wife become a citizen?
Melania just became a citizen.
Yeah. When did she become a citizen? Right before he became a president.
So you think she was over here illegally?
When did Melania Trump become a citizen?
I don't know. But the question is, when did she came over here illegally? Did she not get? I mean, he married her. Yeah, of course he married her, Thad. But normally that's when you become a citizen.
She came over here on a work visa as a model, right?
Yeah,
as a model.
Okay.
She started hooking up with Trump
and
stayed. Yeah, no, she was a model, right? She stayed. Yeah. She stayed because she was Trump was sleeping with her.
Right.
Right. And she hadn't modeled in how long? When last time you see her? She had like a 20-year gap. She had like a 20-year gap in her modeling career where she wasn't working.
Okay, so I just all I'm saying is I haven't seen anything on her. I'm not saying you're wrong.
No. But that wasn't. But what I'm saying, that wasn't an issue. That wasn't an issue. But we'll come back and we'll say, oh, well, Kamala slept with Willie Brown, and that's an issue. What? How is that an issue?
What I'm saying is, it's all fair game. You can talk. I'm amazed that anybody who's a Protestant, anybody who's religious, who is a Christian at heart, says what Trump did to his wives is okay. I don't get that. All the evangelicals for Trump, I don't get it, and I've never understood it. I'm a member of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints. I'm from Utah, one of the most conservative states that there is, one of the most conservative religions that there is. And the entire LDS faith is not everybody, but a huge percentage is pro-Trump. Now, for them, you have to set aside the personal stuff. Now, for me, I think it makes Trump a dirtbag. I think Trump is a dirtbag in a lot of ways. I've said for a long time, Trump is a dirtbag. Not least of which is because he cheated on, well, let's see, who was the first one he was married to? Because then he cheated on her with Marlene Maples, right?
Hold on. Before we get that, Melania Trump came over in 96 as a model. Mm-hmm. She applied for the Einstein visa, the EB-1, in 2000. She became a citizen in 2006, giving her a right to sponsor her parents, Victor and Amajadkovs, who are now U.S. citizens.
Okay.
So they're all anchor babies off of 2006. She met Trump in 98. So in order to obtain that... Go ahead.
But okay, what I'm saying though is there's a difference between being in the country legally and illegally, right? Now, if you were to say to me she was in the country illegally and you told me that in 2004, I would have said, well, then she's overstayed her visa and she needs to go home. I would have said that back then. I think the biggest misnomer in this country that we have is that the only problem with illegal immigration is coming from the southern border, and especially the southern border, it's only Latinos, because my biggest problem with the southern border is the security threat of Chinese nationalists and potential terrorists that are coming across the border, that are military-aged males that are coming across the border. But then you also have, you remember the hijackers for 9/11, most of them were here illegally after their visas expired. And
you still have a large block of Eastern Europeans that are coming over through Jersey that are still undocumented. Just as many undocumented that are not being talked about. So it's not just a southern border issue. It's just
I agree.
New hotness. It's just I'm so over all of the bullshit rhetoric, man.
Part of it is part of it is the numbers. You have to admit part of it's the numbers. When you see pictures of the southern border and you see huge numbers of South Americans and Central American just in huge groups coming through, that visually is a very striking picture. Now, that said, when Trump says, if I'm reelected president, I'm going to get rid of all these illegals. Okay. First of all, I don't believe him because he didn't do it in 2016. Build the wall. Great. Finish the wall. Cool. What are you going to do about the 6 to 10 million people that are here illegally? You're not going to do my idea, which is simply leave them alone, but have ICE go after any company that hires somebody that shouldn't be here. Because if you can't get a job, you're not going to be here, right? Go after, and just the same thing. Why, if you have all of these Border Patrol agents and ICE agents don't only work in Texas, Arizona, New Mexico, and California. They're all over the country. Why aren't they going, like you just said, in New Jersey? Why aren't they going and rounding up these people that have been on these visas and stayed in the country for
because illegal immigration is just the national version of stop and frisk. That's why.
Do you believe that somebody who enters a country illegally should be allowed to remain in that country and receive any benefits of that country, whatever country that is?
No, but I also believe that who are they more likely to stop? The dude on the dude at the construction yard, or the damn dude sitting at the damn baklava stand? If I got a dude selling gyros, if I got a dude selling gyros on the taco cart on Broadway, or the construction team sitting there buying the gyros, who do you think they're gonna stop and frisk first and ask to see papers? Is it gonna be the guy selling the gyros, or is it gonna be the guy, or is it gonna be the construction team? Who are they more likely to?
That's a great question. I don't know. I think I would assume they do both. If
you
were
would
really
assume that's very idealistic, my brother. But
so, who do you think?
The reality
who would they go look on then?
They would definitely go look up the dude in the construction booths, the Hispanic dudes.
That's funny because my first guess, if you'd pressed me, I would have said the Euro dealer.
Yeah, absolutely not.
Especially if the guy on the Euro dealer was
Euros
with a Y. You say it with a Y, Euro.
Yes.
So, okay, so with that though, that's why I think that all of this does matter. Okay, history does matter because part of it is. Now, I understand your point of what does it matter? Harris, 30 years ago, single woman, slept with whoever she wants to sleep with. Okay, fine. So be it. But part of the problem is, but you have at the same time, and Harris did this in this interview. Well, Trump's dad gave him X amount of money. And so that's why he's gotten ahead and he's not middle class and blah, blah, blah. So if on one side, and it's both sides, don't get me wrong, but on one side, if they're going to say, well, Trump got everything he got handed to him on a silver platter, and that's fair game, then if something was handed to her on a silver platter for whatever reason, sexual relationship, why isn't that fair game? If you're going to say it's okay to go after Trump because he was given the money from his dad,
yeah,
and I think that's fair, then why isn't it fair to say, well, Kamala got her start in politics because she was sleeping with the boss?
Because one is proven and the other one's alleged.
Oh, no. Well documented. There are pictures all over. Have you not seen the video where they're at a party and the journalist says to Willie Brown, "Oh, is this your daughter?" And she's like, "No, dude. This is well beyond rumor. This is pretty much documented fact."
I get it that they dated. They could have dated. They could have slept together. But to say that,
you're saying she allegedly got the position because they were sleeping together?
Yeah, he's saying, "Oh, I gave my girlfriend the job of attorney general." Think about.
No, not attorney. No. I'm not talking attorney. I'm talking. No. Hold on. Maybe we're crossing paths in the wind here.
Yeah. Because I want to be very clear. We can't say that at all because
no. So what I'm saying is, and let me be real clear on what I'm saying about Harris. When Harris was having a relationship with Willie Brown, there was a position in the Bay Area. A politically appointed position. It was a board. It was like 5 people, and it was like the retirement fund something or other, right? And everybody on that board was late into their careers, like they're in their early 60s, just kind of running out their time so that they could get their pensions. And it was a cake job. While she was dating Willie Brown, she was appointed to one of those positions, one of those 5 or however many positions. And that was her political start. Now, again, nepotism happens all the time, right? I have a problem if Trump were to appoint his kids to a government position that they are not qualified for. I have a problem with that. And it happens. I know all of them. It happens for all of them. Dude, you and I have talked about this in the college level. It's insane that just because your dad went to Yale, you should get a spot at Yale.
Bro, Trump's daughter-in-law is appointed to the National RNC.
Okay,
nobody's batting a damn eye. But we want to talk about Willie Brown from 30 years ago. Trump appointed his damn daughter-in-law to the head of the National RNC this year, and nobody cares.
I'm not a Republican.
I know, but what I'm saying, nobody cares. Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner were advisors to the White House during his administration. What credentials did they have? What experience did they have?
Ivanka actually does. She now you can say what you want. She's actually run some of the businesses. I would vote for Ivanka before I vote for Donald, by the way.
What credentials did they have to be in the highest levels of government? None. You can't validate it worth a damn. But there they are in the White House with the highest levels of security, and they will walk through the door. But what we say as a society, that's okay. We can say that's okay, right? Because hey, why not, right? That's fine. But then we'll come back and we'll say, oh well, I have a problem with Kamala because she got her start because she was dating Willie Brown at some local damn board 30 years ago. Hold on. You're missing my entire argument here. Okay. My argument is that what she did 30 years ago should be fair game if all the stuff about Trump and nepotism, if that's all fair game. And nobody says, KJ, we can't talk about Ivanka being and Jared Kushner. Hey, look, if people want to talk about Jared Kushner isn't qualified and shouldn't have got a security clearance, cool. I'm down with talking about that. I think that is a legitimate topic. But when I'm saying they don't, though, they don't see it as the same issue. But there's a difference. They see it completely different. But see, and if you and I are talking about it right now, you're saying we shouldn't. This is my problem. You're saying we shouldn't be talking about that right now, and I'm saying why not? You want to bring up Kushner, and you want to bring up Ivanka, and you want to bring up Don Jr. and whoever. Cool. You want to bring up Barron? Is Barron 18 yet? I think he just turned. He's 18. So now we can talk about him, and that's fine. And if people are looking for a reason to disqualify her, trust me, they are going to find a reason anyway, right? Let's go with a true down the middle undecided voter, right? A true undecided voter is not going to look back and go, well, gosh, with everything I've heard about Harris and everything I've heard about Trump, I just haven't decided yet. Oh, but wait, she got her start 30 years ago because she was dating Willie Brown? Oh, well, no, I can't vote for her. If you're looking for a reason not to vote for somebody, you're going to find it. And that's why all I'm saying with that is, look, there's nothing wrong. Do I think it's a big deal? No, not really. I don't think it's nearly as a big deal as some of the other stuff. Again, right now, if I was an independent voter, I think her skipping the Al Smith dinner is going to affect my perception of her way more than Willie Smith. I mean, last week when we were doing the debate, and oh my gosh, your boy starts with an E. Elton. Sorry. When Elton said, hey, a lot of people don't know who two people were, and one of them was a NAACP kind of had a leader in the NAACP movement. And then he said Betsy Smith. And I was like, well, I don't know who either of those are. And then I realized afterwards it was Bessie Smith. I was like, oh, well, I know who Bessie Smith is. But the other person he mentioned who was a leader in the NAACP, and I thought, I don't know who he is, but I know who Walter White is. And Walter White, I've read the book about Walter White. He was basically a white-skinned, what it would have been called back in the day, a white-skinned Negro. He passed, right? And so he was the guy that they sent undercover in the South to go kind of represent the NAACP and gather information because he could pass as a white man, even though he had African-American Black heritage. So to me, I'm like, as I read that, I go, that's part of the problem with history is what history is more important, the guy that Elton said or Walter White or somebody else. So when we're talking about this debate and we're talking about Harris, it's kind of like, I look at it like, I don't know if anything, when you're the president, should be off the table. If somebody says, I don't like Harris because of her cackle, well, okay. Don't vote for her because of her cackle. That's not a great reason, but okay. But that's no different than, well, I'm going to vote for Harris just because she would be the first woman. What does that have to do with anything? I look at it and go, look, who's the best for the job?
you know, for me, I've said this many, many times. I'm going to plug my nose and close my eyes and vote for Trump because I think he's the lesser of two evils. And Elton was saying, look, we need to give her the chance. We don't know what she's going to be. And we know what Trump is, and he doesn't like Trump, and that's totally fine. He can vote for Harris. I have no problem with anybody voting for Harris. My bigger problem is, again, let's circle back to the original, which was if she went on Rogan and Trump went on Rogan, I think Rogan would absolutely ask Trump about Stormy Daniels. I have no doubt he would. I think it'd be hilarious to listen to be honest. I want to hear what he thinks about Michael Cohen. I want to hear what he thinks about General Milley and what he did and what Mark Esper did. And what Harris just said in this interview is she said, I've got all these Republicans on my side. I've got the former chief of staff. I've got the former, secretary of the army and these people. And I sit there going, a lot of these people don't want Trump back in office because when Trump talks about going after his, be real clear, when the left says Trump is going to go after his political opponents, I think these people are worried that Trump is going to say, hey, I want them investigated, because Mark Esper in his own book wrote, I purposefully worked against the president because I work for the Constitution, not for the president. And he never said the president was giving an unconstitutional order. He was saying, I look at the Constitution differently. And General Milley admitted that he had contacted one of the top generals, his cohort was, I believe the word, in China, and said, look, don't worry. We understand you're worried that President Trump on his way out might instigate and press the button on nuclear. And we're not going to let him. Trust me, we will not do that. That's treason. You're calling a major military leader in another country and saying, I will not follow the order of the president of the United States on his way out of office. Legally, could Trump have done it? Sure. He didn't do it. Legally, by Constitution, could he have? Sure. But that's why I think there are so many people that are jumping ship. You think Dick Cheney, the evil Darth Vader Dick Cheney that we've heard about for the last 20 years being the most evil people in the world by Democrats, and they're suddenly going, see, Dick Cheney's voting for Harris. Yay, we should see even Dick Cheney support. Or shouldn't you be saying, well, Dick Cheney, he's been evil for 20 years. He's been making all this money off the military industrial complex, and he wants that money spigot to be kept on, and his daughter does too. Hey, who's going to keep that spigot going? Harris is. That's when I start looking at the second and third order effects and saying that's the problem with I have these people. And maybe it's my tin hat. But as far as talking about Harris and Trump, I just think it's all fair game. I think personality is fair game. You want to talk about, and this will probably lead to the next thing, and I'll try to set it up here. If you want to say, and I've seen some stuff, well, Trump going into the McDonald's and working it was a closed McDonald's, so it was just a photo op. A presidential candidate ran a photo op? It wasn't real. He wasn't really working at McDonald's? Gasp! I don't believe it.
Was he working at what?
Well, I mean, he was working. He handed out food that was cooked at a McDonald's to several cars as the press was right outside the drive-through window. He put the apron on. He was handed the food. He shook hands with them, gave them their food. They drove off. I've seen 3 customers. I don't know how long he was actually. They show him working the fry machine.
Let's check it out. Hold on.
Yeah.
Let's check it out.
Good touch it, huh? Wow, that's pretty cool.
Oh, he's a pro. Give him $15 an
Can I
hour.
give it to these guys? Here, take it.
Want to do another one?
Yeah, that's all he did. It's a photo op.
Let's do it.
That, no. Hold that there, good. And then you can hang that one right back over there. Thank you. And then we're going to grab our salt.
Standing in the back.
And then just one dump, no movement. Good.
One dump.
One over.
Never touched by a human hand. Nice and clean.
Never touch.
I love salt. Wait a minute, I spilled some. I'm very superstitious.
Fuck out of
It's
here.
over the left shoulder now.
Probably hasn't been in the
that's
damn
funny.
kitchen in
I mean, that's
40 years.
thousands of people.
That's funny.
Hello, how are you? What a
Did you stop it or did it freeze?
beautiful woman.
Somebody froze.
Look at it. Hi, Mom. Look at Mom over there. Thank you very much. Thank you, darling. You have a great mom? Good or great? That's right. She knew what to say. Thank you very much. Thank you, darling. Wow.
You know what to say. What's she going to say? I'm not voting for you.
Okay, these are
You
nice
think they
people we're
vetted the
meeting.
cars that went through? It's a photo op.
Okay, got it. Mary, look at this guy. I'm not going to mess with him, huh?
How you doing,
You
sir?
look fantastic. Hello.
This is my new baby boy.
How are you? Your new baby. How are
Yes.
you?
Doing great.
Kids, how are
My
you?
niece.
So this is compliments of me.
I want to follow up
You
with
go
this
have a
car.
good time.
In 3
Don't
weeks,
eat too
ask them
much,
who they
right?
actually voted for. I'd be curious.
Thank you, man. You take care.
Because you know they're vetted. You know as
Have a
they're
good
coming
time.
through, they were like, hey, who are you voting for?
Get out of my
I'm
line.
voting for Harris.
You got like a
I'm voting for Harris.
This is
Okay,
fun. I
there's
could
another
do this all
McDonald's
day. I
about
wouldn't
2
mind
miles
this
down the
job.
road.
I like this shop. I think I might come back and do it again. Thank you. It's Kamala's
won't.
birthday? She's 60 years old? Yes, I would say happy birthday, Kamala. She's turning 60.
Did you get her some fries?
I think I'll get her some flowers. Maybe I'll get her some fries. You're right, that might be. I'll give her some McDonald's. I'll get her a
fries.
McDonald's hamburger. No, it is her birthday. That is true, right? Happy birthday, Kamala. Happy birthday. See you later. Bye. Thank you, everybody.
He's probably sincere about that, too. That's the crazy thing. And even
You know
if he
what?
doesn't, he fakes sincerity pretty well.
I think he's crazy enough to actually mean it too. That's what's weird about that dude. Like,
I could see him turning around after the shut, and he turned to whoever his staffer was and say, hey, make
send her
sure
some flowers.
you
Yeah.
send her, a big one, too. I want huge. I want the biggest, greatest, freshest flowers ever.
But see, and that's I don't think Donald Trump is a bad guy. Like, I think genuinely he could be a decent dude. I just think he's a shitty president. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, he's warped as hell as a president. And not that he's a bad administrator, because he's too gullible, right? He will allow people with bad intentions to get close to him, and he doesn't have the wherewithal to realize that he's being played. And bad actors are going to get in, and they're going to put in bad policies, and it's not going to be a good administration.
And to that, I would say that
is my biggest concern with the Trump presidency.
To that's why I say you have the checks and balances, right? That's why you have the House and you have the Senate and you have the Supreme Court.
And you know how I feel
now it's a slow, well, right. It's a slow process, but it's funny though that, Trump, it's tough because I'm almost the opposite, where you say, he's probably a pretty good guy, but he's a shitty president. I think that my bigger concern is his personal peccadillos, which is, his cheating. But the problem when you get to that level, I don't know if there's been a quote unquote clean president in a long time. Okay. Kennedy, you go back and you read about what Kennedy was. JFK, he was a piece of crap, with women. I mean, LBJ was the same way. We already know Clinton was the same way. I'm not going to say Obama because I don't know enough. I think Obama.
There's very few POTUSes who've been in the White House and actually had a measure of decency, right? Like very.
Is Eisenhower the last one that you can kind of go, he was at least somewhat clean?
Eisenhower was at least the last dude that at least had principles, right?
I think Nixon.
His vices weren't carnal in nature.
Yeah.
If we,
I think the funny thing is, I think Nixon got sullied because of how he lost in the 1960 election. We've talked about that.
Right.
And if you keep going back, like, I mean, Roosevelt, right from the start, he lied about his polio. Like he was like, don't ever take pictures of me. No, there's no press while I'm in my wheelchair.
Yeah.
Pictures of him in a wheelchair are really rare.
Yeah.
The dude couldn't walk. Like he had polio. JFK had a pretty serious disease that they hid from people. Bush W. I mean, nobody cared once it came out that he snorted cocaine when he was in college, because we were already on the decline of holding people moral. You know, when Clinton says, "Oh yeah, I smoked weed, but I didn't inhale." Really, dude? Like, come on.
Yeah.
And now nobody cares anymore, because I think part of the other problem is this is, and this is a fairly recent one, is we've got to the point, and I fully expect some form of October surprise, right? I'm waiting for somebody's going to accuse Trump of rape or something, which we've all heard before. But everybody just kind of rolls their eyes after what happened to Kavanaugh. Kavanaugh got absolutely just castigated by somebody who, in my opinion, and anybody who's paying attention, she made it up out of whole cloth. It was political hit job. She had the dates wrong. None of her witnesses, friends that were her age were with her, supported her.
Kavanaugh was drinking beer in college, right? He raped a girl in college or something.
Gasp! She claims, Blasey Ford claimed that she was, but nobody remembers. He's like, I've never met her. It's crazy. And then you remember at the end, and then you remember at the end, he was like getting mad. He's like, I never, and this isn't the disposition we want of a Supreme Court justice. It's like, somebody accused me of that, I'd be pretty pissed too. I've had some pretty recent accusations against me that were bull crap. And when I get going, I have to really watch what I say, because I get mad about it too, because I got accused of stuff that flat out never happened, and it affected my career. So I can totally understand how Kavanaugh's ticked off about it. Look, but we're at the point, like, look, who was the pitcher for the Dodgers? Trevor Bauer. Like, Trevor Bauer gets accused of sexual assault. Then you see these pictures of the girl in the bed right next to him. Click. And the texts come out that she was gold digging. She was like, I'm going to take him for everything he's worth. He kicked her to the curb. And then the whole thing was, well, he liked rough sex. And now he's blackballed from baseball. And if he was playing right now, he'd be going to the World Series, because the Dodgers just went up 6-1 in the bottom of the third, because Will Smith just hit another home run too after Edmonds. So the Dodgers and Yankees are going to be in the World Series, which everybody I think wants.
58 minutes into the cast.
Well, hey, you know what? The Dodgers just took a commanding lead, so I wasn't going to say anything if the Mets were taking a lead. But like, realistically, I look at Trump, and I have a problem much more with the person that Trump is, but I am much more driven by the policies. At the end of 2019, the 2020 election, when it was Biden and Trump, I told anybody that would listen, I said, look, if appointing this Supreme Court justice, the final one, who was the most recent one? Amy
Coney Barrett, and then it was Ketanji, the last.
Okay, ACB. Barrett, right? Okay. So that was the one that everybody was freaking out, because Ruth Bader Ginsburg had just died, and they're like, oh, well, the Republicans blocked the last one for Obama. And I was like, and like, they used the rules that were there at the time. And now Cohen Barrett, she's in, and rules. And I said at the time, if this costs Trump the election by putting her in over Ruth Bader Ginsburg, that is 100% a trade I will make every day, because I think this, and this is how I said it, I think the Supreme Court would actually go against Trump more than he thinks by having conservative constitutionalists. When people talk about Trump coming in and he's going to be a dictator, I really do think the Supreme Court would go, no, dude, you can say what you want about Thomas. You can say what you want about Alito. You can say what you want about any of them. Not one of them would uphold any law or any move by a president that would go down the path. I just don't believe it. I do not believe that they would go down the path of a dictatorship, because this country, if the Supreme Court at any point would have allowed it, it would have already been done. Even when you had justices that were on. Do you know that, speaking of Roosevelt, do you know what he did in the 40s? Have you ever heard this? He tried to expand the court. He tried to designate a junior justice to each Supreme Court justice and basically attach them to that justice, so that as that justice, so he was basically, and you know who shot it down? Everybody. It wasn't even the court that shut it down. Both houses of the legislature, everybody kind of went, we are not doing this. That is not right. It's unconstitutional. So I don't think that Trump, and this won't happen, even if there was a red tsunami and somehow the Republicans won a 60 majority in the Senate and clear and obvious in the House, I really don't think there's anything that passes that freaks people out as much as even Obamacare. Like, what would Trump do if he had a super majority? The first thing he does is he says, we're going to build the wall. We're going to build the wall. Do people really freak out about building a wall that lots of people say, oh, it won't even work? Well, if it won't work, why not build it? It would have cost $5 billion to finish the wall. How much money have we given to Ukraine? If he says, I'm done supporting Ukraine, that's it, and we're not sending any more money to Ukraine, I think a pretty good percentage of America kind of goes, yeah, we sent them a lot of money. Now, personally, the only reason I support Ukraine is because it bleeds Russia as an enemy. Ukraine is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. And Ukraine is one of the most corrupt governments, has been for 50 years. And the longer they've been fighting.
But you know that, though. We are in, you know how that works, man. We're in pay for play, brother. When we can't pay our proxies, brother, there are ramifications. We have to pay these guys.
Oh, and that's why I'm saying I don't.
And that's why I'm saying supporting. That's where Trump is the most dangerous, because that rhetoric, we have to start taking him at his word when he starts talking about tariffs and this cutting off NATO.
Okay. Well, first of all, he didn't cut off NATO.
No, he didn't, but he says he would. Eventually, we got to start listening to him.
But do you remember why he said he would?
Because he said they're not paying their fair share.
There you go. He said, look, if nobody else is going to pay their fair share, I'm done with this crap. And what happened? All of them started going. So let's go with Ukraine. If he says, look, I'm not going to keep supporting this war in Ukraine and spending hundreds of billions of dollars in Ukraine, and so if I'm elected, it's going to be over. And people say, well, he's too cozy with Putin. Look, isn't that worth it? If he has a relationship with Putin, he calls out Putin and says, hey, stop this crap. And Putin goes, yeah, okay. What's wrong with that? But even here's the secondary. Let's say Putin says, you know what? F you, dude. I don't give a crap. And Trump, if that happened, Trump would go, oh yeah, F you too. And he'd probably pump more money into Ukraine. But two, if for whatever reason, Putin said, you know what? We have to win this. This is like our Vietnam for you guys. We can't just stop without winning. And Trump said, well, okay, look, you do what you got to do, but we're not going to send any more money to Ukraine. What that would force is the European community, because that's who's really threatened by this, is the EU is threatened because one of the major thoroughfares for Russia to invade anybody is through Ukraine. That's why Ukraine is such a strategic, important part of this, is because Russia and the troops can't get into Europe without going through Ukraine. So that's why it's such a threat to put Ukraine into NATO. Okay. So if the United States pulled out of Ukraine, money-wise, that would force the rest of Europe to go, okay, are we going to pony up then? Or are we just going to back down too? Because if it's that important, well, then Germany and England and Spain and Italy and everybody else in the European community and Turkey would be worried. Let's put it like that. Let alone some other countries. But to me, at this point, the only reason to stay in Ukraine is to continue to bleed Russia. But Russia has bled now for this war. You remember when this happened, what everybody said? Oh my gosh, Russia's going to come in. They're going to blitzkrieg through. This is going to be a 2-week war. And Ukraine is just, if we don't get in, this is going to be a 2-week war. And then we were like, okay, well, we'll support them. But we didn't do anything for a couple of months. We didn't put any boots on the ground. You think we just magically sent them gear? It takes time to coordinate. So what they did is, okay, started pumping money, started getting artillery rounds, all that stuff. But if the United States at this point is worried about Russia militarily, I think that's the wrong thing. The only thing we should be worried about militarily, and I think the only thing Europe should be worried about militarily from Russia, is the nuclear bomb. That's it. Because who we should be worried about militarily is China. Who we should be worried about cyber is China 1, Iran 2, and Russia 3.
We're gonna have to have this.
Could Russia rebuild?
No, we would.
Go ahead.
This is a conversation we can't have. We can't have in a public forum because, I'm gonna have to. There are some things that I don't think you're privy to, for strategic reasons why we can't just. It's not as simple as just, we're just gonna cut the faucet off.
That's what I'm saying.
But I think you know. But we can't have that conversation on the podcast.
Okay, but that's what I'm saying though.
That conversation for the podcast.
I think we're okay with it because we're not getting all this is open source stuff. Everything is open source. Right. Okay, so I will just finish on this. I think when Trump talks about forcing NATO to do certain things, about saying we're going to pull out of the UN because we give them 50% of their budget, and the UN as an organization is legitimately anti-American, like anti-America and anti-Israel. I look at that and go, yeah, they are. The UN for years, and we talked about this previously, the UN was a spy agency for Russia, for the USSR. Okay.
But you know why though? They're anti-US and anti-Israel. How in the hell are we how are we a partnership and you have one country has ultimate veto power? How is that possible?
But no, there's 5 countries on the Security Council that all have veto power.
Right.
It's not just the US.
Technically, but
the Soviets in China have used it lots and lots of times. The US I'd be curious. I'd be curious what the numbers are as far as the number of vetoes in the security. But most of the vetoes, again, are things like they're dumb things. It's like when somebody does a censure. Hey, we're going to, oh crap, the Mets just hit a 2-run home run. We're going to censure, who was it that got censured recently for like drunk driving in the Senate? It was somebody, right? Oh, we're going to censor them. Do you really think that matters? No, it's like somebody getting a counseling in the military. It just
I'm talking about like in terms of like, that's let's rock. We're gonna rock.
Well, let's go back to French fries.
So all right. So next video we're gonna play is we're gonna talk about the Univision. Yeah, I like that one. All right, let's run this video up. We'll cue this one.
To persuade at a recent town hall. But first, to set the stage, here's what that interaction looked like between Trump and Ramiro Gonzalez.
I am a Republican, no longer registered though.
Like me.
I want to give you the opportunity to try to win back my vote. Okay. Your, I'd say, action and maybe inaction during your presidency and the last few years sort of, was a little disturbing to me. What happened during January 6th and the fact that, you you waited so long to take
Oh, is
action
this where you said
while
January
your
6th was
supporters
a day
were
of
attacking the Capitol. Coronavirus, I thought the public was misled during coronavirus, and that many more lives could have been saved if we would have been informed better. And also people in your administration who don't support you. I'm curious how people so close to you and your administration no longer want to support you, so why would I want to support you? If you would answer these questions for me, I would really appreciate it and give you the opportunity. There's, your own vice president doesn't want to support you now.
Thank you.
Really good.
So the people that don't support a very small portion. We have a tremendous, about 97% of the people in the administration support me. But because it's me, somebody doesn't support, they get a little publicity. The vice president, I disagree with him on what he did. I totally disagreed with him on what he did. Very importantly, you had hundreds of thousands of people come to Washington. They didn't come because of me. They came because of the election. They thought the election was a rigged election, and that's why they came. Some of those people went down to the Capitol. I said peacefully and patriotically, nothing done wrong at all, nothing done wrong. And action was taken, strong action. Ashley Babbitt was killed. Nobody was killed. There were no guns down there. We didn't have guns. The others had guns, but we didn't have guns. And when I say we, these are people that walked down. This was a tiny percentage of the overall, which nobody sees and nobody shows. But that was a day of love from the standpoint of the millions. It's like hundreds of thousands. It could have been the largest group I've ever spoken before. They asked me to speak. I went and I spoke. And I used the term peacefully and patriotically. If you look at the Democrats, what they say, you look at Maxine Waters and you look at Hillary Clinton and you look at what they say, and they don't put that on. They only put Republicans on. But they couldn't get me because of the fact that I said everything's got to be peaceful and patriotic. And we'll see how it all works out. But I think that we're right now in another election. All I want is honest elections. I'm willing to take any chance. I want honest elections.
We now have an update from that very voter in the aftermath of the word salad that was Donald Trump's response.
¿Recibió la respuesta que estaba buscando?
No. Yo vi lo que pasó. Yo estaba mirando el televisor y he visto muchos news clips y ¿sabes? De lo que pasó ese día.
Usted llegó indeciso a esta actividad. ¿Tiene una decisión hecha para hoy?
Yo no voy a votar por él.
And look, it's not all that surprising. First of all, what does it say about Trump?
Yeah, I'm just gonna cut it there because that he goes.
Well, he didn't say he was voting for Harris either, though.
No, he didn't say he was voting for Harris either. But I found that clip interesting because that was a very good line of questioning, man, for independent. I mean, undecided voter, and he's not unique, and I thought that was a good. I thought that was a good segue based off of what we had last week to bring into this week. You find a lot of those guys that are still, riding that line where this may come down to the day that they're in that booth to where people just don't know. It's like they're going to get in that booth and then they're just going to have to say, all right, I have to pick one of these yahoos.
So I think somebody like that, though, if he gets in the booth, I don't see him voting for Harris, right? Does that really hurt Trump? I guess it depends on. I didn't see what state. Where was that? Do you know where that town hall was?
Florida, I think it was. They said.
Okay, Florida. So again, Florida doesn't matter. Florida's going to go for Trump, right?
Yeah, Florida's. Well, we'll see that in the next video. But yeah.
Yeah. So I think that when you have these undecided voters, I don't think they even get to that point where they're in the booth and they're saying, who am I going to vote for? If he truly says, yeah, I'm not going to vote for Trump, he's not even going to get to the booth. He's going to stay home. And so I think you're going to, every election is like this. It's all going to be about the turnout. And so who's excited? And I don't think you have the same level of excitement. And when I say excitement, I'm talking specifically of you don't have the same level of anger against Trump this time around. I think it's been dampened to some degree than from 4 years ago. I think you have 4 years ago, a lot of people I'm going to vote against Trump. I'm going against Trump. I just don't think that happens as much this time. I think you do have some, and you have people that will vote for Harris that were not going to vote for Biden because of age and some of those things. So it's really going to be how many people show up for Trump, and let's see what 538 thinks.
Bring to swing state polling data that we see on 538 that we can use to map out our 2024 electoral college map. It's a very interesting one, and one that comes at a time where the election has become increasingly narrower over the past week. I know you've heard me talk about how close this race was and has been over the past 2 months, but it is now getting to a point where the odds in even places like the 538 forecast, which has pretty consistently had Vice President Harris up 55 to 45, 53 to 47, the race is tightening, and it's 52 to 48, and likely by tomorrow, it's very possible that our forecast here ends up somewhere around 50-50. And that's because the data points have really gotten tighter in these battleground states. Leads for candidates that amount to less than a point really drive us in the direction of unknowing how this election process is going to go. But what's always important, too, is tracking what the polls currently say about the battleground states, what the polls currently predict for the sake of the election, because that's really what will make or break the candidacies for both of these political parties. Now, I'm not going to spend time in looking at the polling data across the safe Democratic and safe Republican states. I honestly think that would be largely a waste of time. But what I am going to do here is just get us to a point of understanding, once we get past those safe states, what the numbers are saying in states ranging from Virginia to New Mexico to New Hampshire to Texas to Minnesota to Florida to Georgia to Arizona, North Carolina, Nevada, Michigan, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, about Virginia, all in reverse order here.
That's my big
honestly,
one.
maybe I'll do that order just to make things a little bit more interesting. But all in all here, looking at the Electoral College from the lens of states that will likely be decided by margins of roughly, maybe, you're talking 8 points, 10 points or less.
It looks a lot.
Let's go ahead and spend our time characterizing all of these states that are currently safe Democrat.
Okay, so he's going to have this safe thing. One of the concerns I have about this election is with how close it's going to be. I don't know what the state laws are in terms of what, because they all have it. If it's within a certain percentage of the vote, it automatically triggers a recount.
Yep.
So that's where, are we going to have another 2000 Bush versus Gore in Florida, but over 3 or 4 different states? That is going to be chaos.
Well, I know in Georgia, they already settled it. They already settled it, saying that they put in the petition too late, too close to the election. So it won't happen in Georgia. So that's great.
Which part?
Where they the same day the ballots had to be hand counted the same day, and they're able to challenge. So I know it won't happen.
But what I'm saying is, even most of these states, if you're within a certain, and I think it's about 0.5%. So let's say Nevada, Arizona, Pennsylvania, and Michigan are all 0.5% one way or the other.
Could be.
And depending on how those go, so you could have a situation where it's too close to call, let's say for those 4 states, and they have to count. And then when they finish the count, last time we were lucky to get it the next day. And even then, there's a lot of, are we sure? And then you're going to have to wait a few more days for an automatic recount. And especially now, what if a couple of these are within 0.1%? You remember, I want to say Biden won Michigan by something like 10,000 votes.
He won Georgia by 10,000. 10,
so there were
10, 8. So it was raised.
Right. So if you have several states like that, we could be looking at what day is the election? November. It's the second Tuesday. Is it November 5th? 5th. Okay, I was going to say 6th. 5th. Okay.
Yeah.
So I honestly, I would not be surprised if we're well into the teens before we get.
Oh, I expect it. Yeah.
And if that happens, okay. I hope everybody agrees with the Second Amendment at that point until then, because you better be able to protect your own.
You better. All right.
So
let's see.
okay,
Democratic,
sorry.
state Republican.
I just wanted to get that in because I don't know what the
Pennsylvania.
rules
Let me
are.
go ahead and
No, you're
fix
good.
that one. One thing I will say, just as a side note, if you're ever interested in looking at what really strong electoral performances look like for the Democratic Party, the 2008 election is a really, really good example of how super strong races can translate. Super strong national candidates, people like Barack Obama, can translate to really strong performances in the swing states. I was looking at some of those margins. I know we know them, and we know that Obama did so well, but the extent at which he did so well is really quite fascinating. If you look at Pennsylvania, you look at Wisconsin, you look at Michigan. This is why I constantly reject that notion that this race, is like 2008, because by every standard,
he doesn't have Florida,
right,
Texas,
that race
and
was
Ohio.
so much more lopsided.
Not yet. No.
Trump's going to win. Obviously, enthusiasm.
No, he put in the solid red and blues first.
High for Democrats.
Just
but it
solid?
doesn't mean independents are as on board with.
Because like Maine is going blue, New Hampshire's going
just look
blue.
at that. If you're ever interested in looking at a bit of electoral history, you'll be shocked by some of those swing state margins.
Colorado's going
States
blue.
like Wisconsin, Michigan, Pennsylvania. Michigan was over 15 points. I kid you not. Right, fascinating that Michigan could be on par with that of a safe blue state now, given how close it is. Really interesting, all around, very interesting stuff. Besides that point,
but that
I wanna
was
get back to our
16
focus
years
here,
ago.
the 2024 election. I'm just about done characterizing all
By
the
that
safe,
argument, Reagan won
Republican
49
states and
states
safe
to
Democratic
1.
states. I'm going to get 2 states
That
out of
was
the way.
only
South
40
Carolina
years
and
ago.
Alaska. New poll out of Alaska shows Donald Trump up 8 points across the state, a reduction in support from 2020, still an 8-point victory, up from 4 points that we saw roughly a month ago.
Only
in
8?
South Carolina, the polls here on average have him hovering roughly, somewhere around, 10, 11, 13, 14 points. It's going to be a likely state.
That's not safe.
I need to go ahead and actually open up Ohio so we can look at those states
right.
first. I realized that I wasn't able
South
to bring
Carolina,
those up
10 or
prior
11
to this. So
points is
Ohio and
not a
Iowa,
safe
2
red.
states that I don't really think we need to spend too much time talking about. What's interesting, though, is that of recent, the polls here in Iowa give Donald Trump roughly about a 5.5% advantage. In Ohio, an 8% advantage. It's always interesting that, there are some instances where Ohio is actually voting to the right of Iowa back in 2016 and 2020. That simply was not the case, but maybe it could be that Midwestern strength that we've seen from people like Tim Walz in areas like Minnesota, which neighbors Iowa, and also to Kamala
You've
Harris,
seen
that
Monty
we've
Python and
surprisingly
the Holy
seen
Grail,
in
right?
some of these Rust Belt battleground states. Regardless,
There's a
though,
point where I want
Ohio
the
and
entire
Iowa
crowd
come
to
into
just
the
cut
fray
in and go,
as
"Get
likely,
on with it!"
Likely Republican states. Now, Democrats are in a pretty solid position when it comes down to Maine at large and Maine's first district here, but that second district is a little bit pesky. Same thing with Nebraska. We'll look at the polls there soon. But these remaining states are the ones that I do have substantive margins on, substantive data points on that we can use to pretty much predict.
But the question is,
based
a
on
lot
what
of
the polls
this,
are telling us
part
about
of the
these
problem
states,
is the
Iowa,
polling's
Ohio,
just
South
not
Carolina,
there.
and Alaska have already been filled in with the
Like,
polls.
why
So
poll
these
in
are the states that
Colorado
really are going to see many more
when
investments from the National
2 months
Party.
ago,
Many
it
more
was
discussions,
Democrat plus
conversations
10,
around,
so they're not even
who's going to
polling
win,
in
who's not going to
Colorado
win
anymore.
this cycle in specific. We will likely see the least amount of investments in
Colorado's
some of
going
these
blue.
surrounding states that are
think.
not as
I
competitive.
think Arizona and
compared to
Mexico
2012,
go big, though.
2016, 2020, where there were heavy investments across the board.
Right now,
and
yeah.
more, narrow focus
I mean, if
investments
you go
across
by
those seven
real clear
battleground states we've been
politics
talking
with
about for
no
quite some
swing
time.
states,
Now, I want to
they're
kick
both
this
red.
off by looking at the
He
state
basically
of Virginia.
sweeps
See that
everything
right now
there
Kamala Harris
with
holds roughly a
nothing on real clear
7.5%
politics
advantage.
outside of
And so when I
Wisconsin
talk to you
goes
about
blue.
Alaska, which we saw a reduction in support for Trump, Iowa
Colorado
we saw a
goes
reduction in support
blue.
for Trump, Ohio
Virginia
is roughly
goes
even
blue.
with that of the last
Nevada's
election.
gonna be in.
Virginia, we're seeing a reduction in support for vice president.
Nevada's
So
right
this
now
is a state that Biden won by
50-50
10
almost.
points. Kamala Harris leads by 7.5. It's still a likely victory.
Okay.
Granted,
If
two
she
Democrats
leads by
are not investing in
7.5,
the
I
state
can't
the same way
argue
they did in
Virginia.
2020.
I'm just a little
They're
bit
not focusing on the
surprised
state the same way
Virginia.
they did in 2016.
It's got to be because of the
The
DC
running mate
area
for the
just being
party
so big.
was from Virginia in 2016.
Probably.
So a lot
And bleed
more was
over
at play and benefit for the
Yeah,
Democrats.
because
in the
everybody,
past two races
nobody
in Virginia,
lives,
which
nobody
might
that works
be
for the government
reason
actually lives
why
in
this
DC.
state is narrowing
Yes.
up and right to
Unless
a
they're
point where
living in their
Kamala Harris
office,
is losing a bit
congressional
of
on a
support,
cot.
but still largely winning the state.
Or so they
Obviously, that's
claim.
something we can talk about at length in future videos. But for right now, we're going to move past it. Kamala Harris up 7.5%. When you take a look at the state of Maine, this is a state where I think the statewide average isn't
Well, that's
something
clearly
that
going
is
blue.
necessarily
I can't even see
too
that if it's
important.
going blue.
But it is that second district average that gives Donald Trump a very
Dad,
narrow
are you
upper
hanging
hand.
in with us
Now,
on
the
this?
University of New Hampshire released data points back in August saying Kamala Harris had a 5-point advantage. The most recent data points say that
We need a
Donald
check
Trump
of life
holds a
for
7-point
Thad.
advantage.
I
The
don't-
state of the
yeah, I
race
think
from
he- I
August
think
is
he
certainly
got
not the state of the race from September, and
Oh,
it's
is he?
certainly not the state of the
Yeah,
race from
it's just-
October.
I
One
don't
thing is
know.
consistent,
He
the
puffs
race is
smoke.
close,
Yeah.
but we did start
He'll
to see
pop
some
in.
Republican
Doesn't matter.
reversions in terms
I don't
of
blame
them
him.
winning back some support they lost at the high point for Kamala Harris.
I wonder if
Regardless,
Thad's
though,
gonna
when you
vote for
average
him,
out
though.
these states, Maine's second district becomes a lean Republican state.
Oh!
Might be a little surprising because it is to me. I think it's going to be a
Whoa.
likely red district. But the polling polling data, when averaged out, gives Kamala Harris a better performance here than Joe Biden, but still a loss across Maine second and still a likely margin.
Oh, that's just Maine second, though.
New Hampshire's the next state I would take a look at when it comes down to margin here. Kamala Harris holding a 6.8%
if he goes Republican peak
largely running
here,
even
then I'll be
with that of the last
surprised. But Maine
election in
second
2020
district,
was roughly 7.2%.
It's like Nebraska fifth or whatever.
Still something there for Democrats to improve upon, but regardless, you're seeing that state largely run even with that of the 2020 election, which is good news for Kamala Harris. Moving over to the next state, the state of New Mexico, Kamala Harris holds a 7-point advantage. Another reduction in support here, kind of in line too with what we've been seeing from the 2020 race. Those Sun Belt states, especially the border states, we've seen some reversions in support away from Kamala Harris and the Democratic Party. Could be a variety of reasons. Could be immigration. Could be the southern border. Whatever it is. Could be the loss in support amongst Hispanic voters across the country. We've seen to the Democratic Party. These are things that are pretty consistent, and the Democrats need to overcome and combat and win back voters. Because what we're seeing in a lot of these data points is that Hispanic voters are not solid. They're not solid on Trump. They're not solid on Harris. There is time and reason that there can be investments to sway these voters. That's why both candidates did the Univision Town Hall. That's why both candidates are running TV ads in Spanish in Texas and New Mexico and Arizona. They're doing an intentional, personalized outreach effort on both sides of the aisle to win back voters that could be in their column, could be the other column, and right now truly are up in the air. New Mexico is one of those states, which is why we are likely seeing a bit of decrease in support from the 2020 race. The next state I would look at is the state of Texas, which recently we saw a brand new poll today, actually. I don't think it's here on the average. Donald Trump holding a 6-point advantage, roughly running even with that of the margin of the average here, but an improvement.
Cruz might lose.
And a likely
Cruz might lose Texas.
Something that we can probably expect to given the shift to New Mexico and Nevada and Arizona.
Oh, yeah, he might.
Only way Cruz loses Texas
right in line there as a shifting state, but still, Kamala Harris
then he'd probably win.
J.D. Vance, Tim Walz, are in a position where Texas still is a more competitive state than it has been in many previous elections, with the exception of 2020. And that's fundamentally good news for Democrats. Because even in a bad time where approval ratings surrounding immigration and the southern border are at an all-time low for Democrats, especially the incumbent president, if Kamala Harris is still coming within 6 points of the state, that means something for future elections.
No, it doesn't. It means you still lose by 6.
Yeah,
what does it mean?
6, the Texas is in play. Moving beyond that, we're going to take a look at Minnesota, state that Tim Walz is from. Went to Biden by 7 points in the last election. I do think that the polling is absolutely missing something here.
Like the only person,
circumstance in which Kamala Harris wins Minnesota by less than Joe Biden did, with the running mate being the governor of Minnesota, who has had more impressive victories in both cycles than Joe Biden,
and now we're back to where the only
harsher
person
odds
that
in 2022.
Harris could beat,
The
or
result
that Trump
here, I think
could beat,
Minnesota
is the other one. Like if you had somebody who was actually
margin, the polls though indicate.
Like at this
Kamala
point, if it
Harris
was
is up by roughly
Vance
6
against
points.
Harris,
Looking
Vance
at
is
Nebraska,
up by 20 points.
specific to that second congressional
I
district
think
here,
Walz,
they have an
Walz
average.
against Trump,
not an
Walz
average,
is
they have
up
a number
20
of polls
points.
here. Kamala Harris, point being, is going to be
I
a
don't like
likely
Walz at all,
characterization in Nebraska.
as
Second,
far as
that
policy
race is
goes.
likely going to be
I think he's
decided by
weird.
7, 8, 9 points.
He's goofy.
Very big advantage for Kamala
And
Harris,
his
an
policies
improvement
are
off of
horrible.
2020.
They think-
Again, nothing is ever consistent in American politics. Laugh out loud at that point. But Nebraska second, likely for the Democrats.
Nebraska
Florida, though,
second, yeah.
likely for the Republicans. Donald Trump holds a 5.3% advantage. It was a bit narrower before. The data seemed to suggest that Florida might be back in play. The data no longer suggests that. Florida becomes a 5.3% margin. It's 30 electoral
surprises
votes.
here
Pretty big victory
for
for
me.
Donald Trump. You can expect to win
New
it on
Mexico
election
is
night.
a surprise for
It
me.
It looks exactly like our map.
Now, I'm missing Colorado.
Colorado's
which I
gonna go blue.
completely forgot that I was missing. So we're going to go ahead and shift over to Colorado. I don't know if there's ever
There it
been
is.
pretty substantive data points since she became the nominee. I don't think so, even just based on looking at some of these numbers. The average here is that she wins the state by roughly a likely margin, but not an extensively polled state. Donald
Too
Trump
many
actually was
liberals
campaigning
in
out in
Denver
Colorado
and-
the other day.
and,
I don't know what that's really going to do for him, but
University of
I think
Colorado.
it'll do something. So maybe it's worth his time. In Georgia, Donald Trump holds a 1.2% advantage. So looking at that data point, 1.2% advantage puts Donald Trump roughly at 235 electoral votes. He wins the state about a
1.2
2-point
is
shift
not
from the
safe,
last
though.
election,
Yeah,
similar to that
I-
of what we're seeing in those Sun Belt states like Arizona and
If
Nevada.
Trump
and
wins by
Texas. It's
1%,
pretty consistent
though,
shift
wouldn't
nationwide.
surprise
The
me.
question is, can Kamala Harris win despite the shift? We'll go ahead and wait and see based on some of
I
the
think
data
Pennsylvania
points.
is really gonna be
Arizona
key.
has Donald Trump up by 1.8%. Very similar shift to that of Georgia. Very much seem to vote together as well. We saw it in
And
2020,
Arizona-
2016, 2012,
Arizona, I think,
2008,
was a misnomer when
2000,
they went.
2004.
As-
Moving
when they
forward, they
went
might
for,
vote together, and they might vote together again in
Biden.
2024. The
Well,
next
I
state I'd
wanna
look at is North
say-
Carolina, where Donald Trump's
I'd have to
advantage
look
is
back
just
to history of
0.7%,
Arizona,
and I
but
say
it's
just
traditionally been
0.7%
fairly
because it's actually a reduction
Republican.
in support from 2020. I think a lot of what we can attribute to that is the fact that Democrats are investing in North Carolina like there's no
Where are we
tomorrow.
at
They're
for
visiting the state a lot
totals
more
right
than they
here
did in previous
if
elections.
North Carolina
and just
goes
based on,
Trump?
again, focus groups of what Kamala Harris does in fact drive out amongst the Democratic electorate. You're talking about black voters in specific. You're talking about women voters. Huge chunks of the electorate in North Carolina comprise of a compounding set of factors for the campaign that could boost their base
right there
to turn out and vote. Makes sense that the state is a bit narrower than 2020. It still ends up with the Trump victory because at the end of the day, he holds the upper hand in some of these Sunbelt states. The next state I'd look at is the state of Nevada, where Kamala Harris holds the narrowest 0.7% advantage across the state. Now, not much data has come out of Nevada recently. Only a few recent points have shown Donald Trump
me. I think Trump's going to win Nevada.
Morning Consult says Harris is up by 4. Fabrizio Lee, they do a poll. Donald Trump sponsored it, so granted, keep that in mind. These numbers. They see Trump leads by 3. The Wall Street Journal did a poll way back when in September.
That's the thing.
So
just because
6. It really is all over the place. The point being that Kamala Harris holds a narrow advantage.
That's
and
probably more accurate because it's internal polling.
The number
they want to know.
In the
they don't want it.
2016,
they want to know if they're actually down by 3 versus up by 3 because that's
presidential election.
They're going to spend money in different places.
As we fill out, this could be a really interesting map. Should Donald Trump win these remaining 3 states, we'd end up with 306 to 232, which is the exact same
Donald Trump
margin
wins any of those 3, he wins.
In 2020, and God forbid in a way 2024, because the discourse on that would be really, really annoying. But here we are.
For the country,
final
it would be
44
good.
electoral votes. Let's start off.
Honestly, it would be good if
Michigan right now holds
close,
Kamala Harris at the advantage point of
Trump to
0.6%, certainly less than where she was before.
For the
September, she was
country
leading by
for
3
one or
points
the
across
other
the state
to
today. It is absolutely narrow.
for this to be a
support there has not increased for Kamala Harris.
265 to
275 for Donald Trump either. The margins have narrowed for Kamala Harris. Decreased on her part. Donald Trump remaining roughly even at his ceiling that we've seen. Kamala Harris holds a narrow advantage.
And Wisconsin's going to go, I think, down.
Now, when it comes down to Pennsylvania, Kamala Harris holds the narrow lead again.
I'm actually going to be surprised if Michigan
based
goes
on those
Democrat after everything that happened with COVID.
0.4% for Kamala Harris.
I don't know.
Whitman's still holding 266 electoral votes to Donald Trump's 262.
I think you're going to have so many people that were sick of what happened during COVID.
Wisconsin here. These 3 races.
This is going to be interesting.
Based on the data points,
because if Kamala pulls Michigan and Pennsylvania,
these states take
that's
going
to be really,
a lot of questions.
And Wisconsin,
what
I assume she's going to take Wisconsin,
given how close the margins were. I remember that was the
Isn't
discussion
that where the VP
in Arizona.
nominee?
In Georgia. In Arizona, it was the case of John McCain. In
Well,
Georgia, it
he's
was the
from
case
Minnesota.
of, all these things
Oh,
that were too extreme
is
for
he?
voters in Atlanta. In Wisconsin,
think
it
it
was the case
Wisconsin.
of not visiting
Okay.
it as much and
Oh,
spending
Ryan's
as
from
much time because we were
Wisconsin.
focused on Pennsylvania and Michigan. Point being, these states are states that Donald Trump and Kamala Harris can absolutely win. And based on where we are right now, Kamala Harris seems to hold the upper advantage in Pennsylvania and Michigan, according to the polls. And Wisconsin, as the final state here, holds the narrowest advantage of 0.2%, despite being the state that Kamala Harris had the largest lead in back in August, around 4 points statewide. Today has narrowed to just 0.2%. Some recent data points showing some strong results for the former president.
You have to
average here.
You have to
very,
dig in.
Very, very narrow
to
advantage.
how the polling
for Kamala
again. How
Harris,
the polling
which would bring
is
her to 276
asked.
electoral votes to Donald Trump's 262.
And
now, the last
so
thing
right
I want to
here-
answer here is: do we trust the polls? Do we trust the polls to give us an accurate depiction of what the election actually looks like? And
Not
in a way,
especially
I say,
after the last few elections.
I think when we look at data points like this and just how narrow they are, given that they give us a 4% margin of error, it really isn't that easy to predict. And that's because while the polls on average might be telling us something,
KJ,
they
kill
all
this
share
real quick.
similar averages in terms of error.
And I want you, while we're doing that, I want you to go to Real Clear Politics, and then under polls,
let me pull it up,
and then the no toss up. So kind of keep an eye. This was 276 to 262.
Real
Clear Politics.
Oh Lord, I messed it up. There we go. All right, and then you said no toss-ups, right?
Right. And then throw that up there.
Where we at? Polls. Give it to me one more time. So we go to polls and then do what?
It's probably polls and then no toss up. Yeah, Real Clear Politics, election polls, and then let's see, find any poll. I'm trying to see where it is.
No toss up states.
Yes.
All right. Yeah, I got it. All right. So let me bring that down, and then I'll share my screen, and we'll go from there. So
if you drop, election 2024 drop down map has.
Hold on. Let me make a note of that so I don't lose that. So what was the numbers on that? That was two. So that's 276.
It was 276 to 262.
blue and 262 red.
Yeah.
All right. So we're gonna bring this down. I wonder what I can't remember what our map was. I got to go back and look and see what our map was.
Yours was about 300. Mine was I was trying to get it to 269 each.
All right, so here we go. So this one with no call update got it 312 to 226. Right.
So Real Clear Politics also does the polling, and it's the most recent polling, and then they average it, right? So this is not just, oh, hey, here's the last poll. And so because the last poll said this, that's what we're going to go by, right?
They have it done. They have a southern sweep. My God.
Yeah. So if you look at like Wisconsin, they went from Wisconsin from Democrat, they switched to Trump, because if you go down, you see the Real Clear Politics. If you scroll down just a little bit under state, so the top one you have Pennsylvania. So, and then the next one down, Wisconsin, they have Trump at 48 and Harris at 47.8. And again, these are, you can click on, you can see what the most recent 5 polls were, and that's what they are. The Biden only won Wisconsin by 0.7. I didn't realize it was that close. But Trump won in 16, both of those. So if you look at these and you say, all right, well, here's the difference and how close these are. I think part of the problem is, let's use that Wisconsin as an example, 48 to 47.8. Okay. So 48 to 47.8. Awesome. Great. 0.2. But that also means 4% are undecided or voting for somebody else. And my guess is 4% are not voting for somebody else. Right? That's another big part of the poll problem. You have so many people. I really truly believe that if a pollster calls somebody, that you have more people that are unlikely to say, I am voting for Trump, than you are Harris. I think if somebody calls and they're voting for Harris, and a pollster calls, hey, we want to do a survey. Yeah, cool. Are you voting for Trump or Harris? Oh, I'm voting for Harris. Hey, we're doing a survey. Are you voting for Trump or Harris? I don't know. And inside they're going, well, yeah, I'm voting for Trump, but I don't know if I wanted necessarily.
I can't trust you enough. I don't trust you enough to tell you that.
I mean, I know you say it's anonymous, but like you called me, dude. And so I think that's worth half a point. But again, even half a point, let's say you add half a point there, it's still leaving out 3.5% or so. Because I don't think Jill Stein or any of the other parties are going to get more than very small. It's very different than if RFK Jr. were still in the race. Then I think you might, in some instances, say 3 to 5% in some states. Like I could see Massachusetts being 3%, but
they did leave his name on the ballot in a couple of key states. So
I've read somewhere, I don't know where it is, but one of the states, if you vote for RFK, the votes go to Trump, is what I read. I don't know if that's true. That doesn't seem likely, but
that just does not seem.
It doesn't, right? But then again, Harris didn't win a single vote in the DNC primary, so who knows?
Well, I mean, you know how that goes. So,
that was the joke that Gaffigan did. He's like, the Democrats are so worried about democracy that they committed a coup against their against their democratically elected nominee, and it was pretty funny. He and then he was talking about how, like, why isn't she here? Like, just totally ripping why she wasn't there. And this is a room full of rich Catholics and Jews, and she decided not to show up to this. This should be a layup for her.
Let me ask you, if on November 5th, the electoral map falls like this, what does the country look like on November 6th?
It looked much healthier than if it looks like the last one. Well, the reason I say that is if you have a 276 to 262, you have Trump coming out and saying, see, they did it to me again. Any one of these states goes to me and I win. And there's just no way. All the polling said that I was going to win. And this is just a repeat of 2020. And I think it's rigged. It's rigged, right? And if it goes like this, I think you have your normal freak out by the liberal media, but the response by the left is going to be more along the lines of, well, crap, we have to put up with this. Oh, no, not 4 more years of this. Well, crap. And I think it'll be a defeatist. I think very few, it'll be a defeatist mentality on the left versus a we got cheated again mentality that would come out of the right, if that makes sense.
That's interesting. So let me ask you, if the numbers are flipped, if the blue team dominates and gets 312 to 226, what does the country look like on November 6th?
Same thing. Much better for the country.
With the blue team at 312?
Yeah. The reason I say that is if the blue team, if it's a big enough win that what was 2012? What were the numbers for 2012?
We should be able to go look, right?
Yeah. So the best case scenario, it's probably somewhere up there.
Yeah, I'll figure it out.
It was 2020 up there. But the best case scenario realistically is a fairly clear and decisive win for one or the other. Okay. Because if you have what you had in 2020 is our worst case scenario. Because I'm sorry, 2000, not 2020. 2000 is our worst case scenario. Because if you have that it's so close that depending on which way it goes, and especially let's add real fuel to the fire. Let's say it's so close that it's Michigan. Whichever way Michigan goes, and Michigan has had a Democrat in office as a governor, so that means probably a Democrat who is the Secretary of State and who validates the voting and all that stuff. It's the same argument that I heard about last week. We heard about Florida. Well, it was Jeb Bush and it's his brother in 2000, and the Secretary of State was a Republican and the Supreme Court were Republican, blah, blah, blah. And so I think if it's close, again, as a conservative, as much as I think Harris's policies will be incredibly bad for the country, as much as, I would rather see a fairly clean win by Harris than a squeak by Harris. Now, of course, I'd rather a Trump squeak than a Harris squeak, but squeak by either one is bad. If there's and being a conservative, of course, I would like Harris to lose because I don't think I think her policies are too far left. And the worst scenario for me would be Harris not only winning, but squeaking by and then also getting the control of the Senate and getting control of the House.
Oh my God.
Yeah. But again, that's purely political and policy, right? That's not a personal thing. I'm not going to be out waving the flag or going and buying an AR-15 and shooting it in the air and getting all mad or anything like that.
They take the House, the Senate, and within 4 years, they replace 2 SCOTUSes. That would
Could
be
happen.
a doomsday scenario. That would be a doomsday scenario.
So here's the thing about that. If that happens, you'd most likely be replacing the 2 oldest, who are Alito and Thomas, right? Okay.
I don't care who wins as long as those 2 justices get replaced. I don't care. How I feel about those 2 justices.
So
I don't
let's
care.
go like this.
I don't care who wins the seat. As long as we replace those 2 corrupt sons of bitches, I don't care who wins the seat.
Okay, we have a different opinion on that. But here's the thing: let's say Trump wins, and let's say Trump gets the Senate, right? Even if it's 50-50 in the Senate and Trump wins, I would guarantee you one of those 2 spots. Trump's not dumb enough to come out and say it, but one of those 2 spots, if it's Thomas, if he goes first, he will be replaced by another black conservative.
I'm okay with that.
Okay. And Alito will be replaced by whoever, but another conservative, right? If I'm advising Trump, like the Heritage Foundation most likely is, I'm looking for a couple things as far as Thomas's replacement. Now, do I personally care what the color of his skin is? Nope, I really don't. But the way the country is, unfortunately, I think if Thomas retires or passes away, that has to be a consideration, unfortunately. I think it's stupid, but I don't think Trump would be.
I don't think Thomas steps down willingly. He just doesn't seem like the
it depends on health.
We can see.
Well, if he's healthy and he says, you know what, I've done this for, let's see, he came in 82, I think.
No, it was later than that. Was it? Because he replaced Thurgood, so it had to be around the early 80s, right?
Yeah, I'm pretty sure it was around 82. That's when Joe Biden said, it was Joe Biden just embarrassing himself back in the day, more so than now. But
91.
Yeah. Oh, okay. Yeah. So even 91, though, you're talking about 33 years. If he says, you know what, I'm done with this. I've seen what I could do by going out on the circuit. And I do like my vacations. And I do want to make some money for my children and grandchildren. That's probably the best way to do it. Because then he goes out and he goes on the circuit. And now he doesn't have to say, fine, yeah, you paid for this trip, but hey, I'll tell you what, I'll come and speak at your country club if you pay me $500,000. And the billionaire buddy goes, shoot, why don't we make it 1.5 million? And Clarence Thomas says, that sounds good to me, right? So I could see in that scenario him going, because it's Trump, because he has, yeah, you know what? Now that I think about it, though, you would think that, okay, Thomas would probably be a little bit worried that no matter who comes in is not going to be as staunch and originalist as he is, right? Okay.
And here's how a lot of Jenny's influence is based off of the position that Thomas holds. If Thomas no longer holds that influence as a senior justice, she loses a lot of clout and her, her influence as well.
Potentially. Yeah.
You know what I'm saying?
But if they're going to trade clout for power, I'm sorry, if they're going to trade clout for money, maybe that's what
I don't know. Yeah. It would have to be, it would have to be financially worth their while, but yeah.
And it could be very easily. But I think if he were going to retire, here's what I would expect. I would expect for him to sit down with Trump and say, if I retire, you're going to have all these different people who are going to tell you who the replacement should be.
Mm-hmm.
I just happen to have a piece of paper on me with 3 names that you need to consider.
Yep.
And Mr. President, if you will tell me right now that you will nominate one of those three, I will step down. And you need to give me your word.
Yep.
Now, I think that he probably would trust Trump, and Trump is probably good for his word on that. I think Trump seems like one of those guys who, if you're really and if he says, I'll think about it, then you go, no, I'll think about it.
Yep.
I want your word.
Yeah.
And maybe you even have other people in the room just to verify, hey, if I'm called into the brigade commander, I'm taking a buddy with me, right?
Yeah.
Just to verify what was said. So I could see that. And if that's what happened, both with him and Alito, I could see two young, stalwart, and in that case, that's probably the worst case scenario for Democrats, because if you replace Alito and Thomas with two 45 to 50-year-olds,
I think it just
reset. You just reset the court for the next 30 years. Now, for me personally, that's a dream scenario. I have long said that I am a one issue voter, and that is the Supreme Court of the United States. I think that America is a stagecoach, and the liberals, classic liberals, I'm not a fan of leftists, but classical liberals are the horses that want to just go, and they drive the stagecoach, and the Republicans are the ones that are up top, kind of holding the reins, and we're all in the stagecoach. Most of us that have no control, we're just in the back. But the Supreme Court is that brake that the Republicans can pull, or the conservatives can pull, that will stop us from going over the cliff.
Tradition.
Because even the drivers can lose control, right? We've seen that time and time again. Now, if you say, for me, as Republicans, what should the Republicans do different? First of all, we need to do something about our debt. Okay, we need to change our energy policies so that we can start making money off of the oil that we have in this country. We need to start switching over immediately from fossil fuels to nuclear, not because I have a problem with fossil fuels, but because nuclear is how you generate the most bang for your buck when it comes to energy. And the other thing is, let's say America were to turn around and we just built one in Georgia, but it took way too long. It took like 10 years or 12 years. It took like $25 billion to build this. And when it just came online, it was like, oh, great. Our energy prices are going to go down. Nuh-uh, they just spiked. I don't know why, and it pisses me off. But I think if you're able to build, let's say, 2 dozen nuclear power plants over the next 20 years in America, what that does is it frees up all that oil that we can now sell to the rest of the world if we want. We can sell that to China. We can sell it to Japan. We can sell it to Germany, who's stupid enough to bring all of their nuclear power plants offline and go to coal. So, idiots. I don't get the environmentalists.
They're going backwards.
Backwards, right. So I think that there's things that could be done, that if there's one thing that Trump has said that he is going to do that I would love for him to do, but I don't trust that he will do, is shut down the Department of Education. I'm going into the teaching profession next summer. And what did Elton say in the debate last week? He said, I hate to tell you, Lance, but if you become a teacher, you're only going to be able to teach what they allow you to teach. Now, that's true to a degree.
Yeah.
But if you get rid of the Department of Education, that is going to open it up to the states. And I think the states are going to have a lot more control. And when I say control, it's almost less control. They're going to go, hey, you know what? Here's the guidelines, but it's gonna give some air and some oxygen to what teachers can teach. And I think that's important. I also think the Department of Education hopefully would also break up the monopoly that leftists have at the university level. If you go look at the number of professors that are Democrats versus Republicans, there's not a single department in or subject in any category that is even 50-50. I think that the most Republicans were in the business degrees, and it was still something like 75% were Democrats. Higher education is absolutely a bastion for leftist thinking. So we need to break that up. If Harris wins, I hope she follows through on her campaign promises. I hope she doesn't stop fracking. I hope she gets serious about the border. I would love to see both candidates decriminalize marijuana. I would love to see the subject of veteran suicide become more of a priority for both parties, for veteran health care. I think the VA has gotten better over the last several years. That said, I don't know enough because I don't have to deal with the VA yet, but I've heard a lot less chirping from the veteran community. So to me, less chirping actually generally means pretty good, getting better.
Thank you, Obama.
And the VA, and Trump to continue that, right?
Yeah.
And the VA,
absolutely.
The VA, the biggest thing, I don't recall if it was the legislature or if it was Trump or Obama, but something happened where some of the VA guys were, wasn't it Phoenix that was just seen to be just like absolutely inept. And so the federal government stepped in and said, okay, if you guys don't start firing these guys, then you're going to get fired. And if that was Obama, congrats, good job, Obama.
The Obama administration they did like a complete overhaul with the VA system. They like the Vietnam guys, kudos on them. They went up to Washington and they raised all kinds of hell. And because a lot of those guys weren't getting qualified for the Agent Orange and stuff. They were just being unjustly disqualified. So the Obama administration, like they put together a comprehensive panel and they went through and got all those guys, like a lot of the guys from like the 80s that were doing a lot of those Central American missions. They weren't technically qualified because it wasn't wartime missions or whatever.
It wasn't combat technically.
Yeah. So what the Obama administration did is they just opened it up and they was like, all right, listen, hey, here's the funding. I need you guys, you got 10 years, reform all of it, right? So they opened the window. And then when Trump got in, Trump looked at it and said, all right, well, we're going to rebrand it. We're going to put it under my name and I'm going to give you more funding. Go fix this shit. You know what I'm saying? Yeah. So it started under Obama, but then Trump was like, hey, this is a great idea. Here's more money. Do it faster so I can take credit. And then
which administration said, hey, we're going to now allow you to actually fire this deadweight?
Yeah, that was Trump.
Okay.
Yeah, that was Trump. Yeah.
To me,
yeah, that was Trump. Trump was like, he was like, look, if the doctors aren't freaking treating you, then get rid of them.
Yeah. And if the administrators aren't treating you with respect and all.
Yeah. And what that does, and what that did is that freed up a lot of, that's where you started to see a lot of overturn and cleared up a lot of backlog at the VA. Because I mean, for a long time, those guys were just, I mean, we had shitty doctors in the VA, man. And they were so tenured that you couldn't do nothing with them. They were just fucking there. So the Trump administration was like, yo, man, if their evaluations suck, fucking get rid of them. And
and that,
like once the cuffs came off, like you'd be surprised. The VA came out with these
the same
ratings. Oh man.
And honestly, I hope the same thing happens in the military. You remember Major Hassan, who went and shot up Fort Hood. The reason he was in that position was because nobody wanted to give him a bad evaluation, because they were all so worried that, if I give him a bad eval, I'm going to be accused of Islamophobia. And then what happened? He went and killed a bunch of freaking soldiers because he didn't want to deploy.
Yeah.
And he'd been converted to radical Islam too, but so small detail. But like realistically, he should have been.
Hey, Allie.
Yeah, I saw Allie out there. So like realistically, he should have been out. So that's what I want to see. And that's where, like, that's one thing that if I were to say, if I were to advise President Trump on certain things, like one question that both of these people have gotten, Harris and Trump have gotten, which is, what would you change? Like over the past 4 years or from your administration, whichever, what would you change? And Harris hasn't said anything. She's really funny because it's like, what would you change? She say, well, nothing. I wouldn't change a thing. Okay, then what are we doing? Well, we're turning the page. What do you mean from what? You said everything was good. Well, I'm not Joe Biden.
I know it's like the dumbest answer. I'm like, bro. And then she like the shit that, I mean, excuse me, the thing that bothers me the most is you'll say, okay, well, I wouldn't change a thing. You know, I wouldn't change a thing. But then you'll come right out of your mouth and say, well, my presidency won't be a Biden presidency. I'm like, which one is it? Like, which one is, you have to pick a lane and stick with it, bro. Like, you can't just flip flop that fast. Like, just pick I don't care which one it is, but you gotta pick one. Just
and that was the one line of the Bear interview I didn't bring up that just I went, holy crap. And what's her name? The former Dana Perino, she brought up, she was like, when she said, because they were talking about the transgender thing in prisons, and Harris said, well, you know, that was a law that was on the books for Trump too. And Bear said, well, yeah, but he didn't promote it. He didn't push it. And she said, well, you know what? You have to take accountability for what happens in your administration. I was just like, when she said that, I was like, that's a campaign ad for Trump right there. Kamala Harris says she's not like Joe Biden, but she says, you have to be accountable for everything that happens in your administration. Kamala Harris has been responsible for everything in the last 3.5 years. Vote Trump. But the other thing that I think Trump needs to do, if they ask him, what would you do differently, or what mistakes have you made? I think he should say, you know, in 2016, I said I was going to drain the swamp. And I did not realize how much pushback I was going to get because of the swamp, because of those people that are in Washington, D.C. that are so entrenched. And you saw it. You saw the deep state push back against me. Well, you know what? This time, I'm going to get rid of everyone who has been in Washington for over 10 years. I don't care if they're Republican. I don't care if they're Democrat. I am going to drain the swamp of these people who have been living off of the federal government's teat for their entire careers. And that's what I should have done then. And that's what I'm going to do now. Now, here's the funny thing. If he said that, every independent would go for Trump and 5% of the Democrats would go for Trump. Trump would win. Trump, if he said that and it was reported that he said it like that, and if he flooded, that was his campaign ad. 30 seconds, go. I just want to say that if I'm elected, I messed up in 2016. I told the American people that I was going to drain the swamp of the federal workers in Washington, D.C. I didn't realize how hard the deep state was going to push back. Now I'm prepared. You elect me as your next president, I will shut down the deep state. I will get rid of anyone who has been in federal service as their entire career. This is not supposed to be your entire career. Washington, D.C., I will stop it. I am Donald J. Trump, and I support this ad. He goes up. I'm not kidding you. He goes up 5% in every state.
Yep. Let's see how well that's going to play, huh?
Oh, he'll never do it. It doesn't matter. He's not going to do that.
Hundreds of thousands of government workers see an ad that says, if I become your next boss, I'm firing all y'all asses. Yeah. You're not going to get my vote.
You know how? No. Think about it. Hold about it. So what? So what state do you lose? If you do that, what state do you lose?
Well, yeah. I mean, he wasn't going to win that state anyway. So
right. He's not going to win Virginia anyway. Okay, yeah. So he goes down 5 points in Virginia that he was going to lose anyway, and the rest of the country goes, really? Yeah, absolutely. And here's how he does it. And people will say, well, there's no way. It's like immigration. You can do it. You say this. This is how you do it. You say, look, over the next 4 years, anybody that is at 16 plus years of service or is already retirement age If you're over 20 years of federal service, you have 1 year. Anybody over 20 years of federal service has 1 year, and then your position will be eliminated. Anybody at 18 years will be eliminated in 2 years. That gives you 2 years to find a new job. Anybody that's at 15 years, sorry. Now, here's the thing, though. And people will say, well, you lose too many good people, right? Oh, okay. You can reapply for your job. You can reapply for a new job in the federal government. If you're a, let's say you're a accountant in ICE, right? And you're like, well, I have 12 years. I'm an accountant. I've been with ICE for 12 years. What am I going to do? I guess I'll go apply for a job in the Department of Energy as an accountant. I'll go apply for a job, and you may scramble and all that. But if Trump says, I'm not going to allow you to remain in the same job, the same position, the same line item. Now, again, it doesn't mean if you're a 42 Alpha in the Army, which is admin, you can't go from battalion, the 121st Battalion, that you can't apply down the road at the 456th Battalion. And if they're like, yeah, we'd love to have you down here, this is great, fine, you can get hired. It's a new position, okay? Because would it cause some chaos? Sure, but you know what? Over the next 2 years, you need that turnover. What is the worst? I don't know about you, but for me, the worst thing in the Army has not been bad commanders. It has not been bad leaders. It has not been bad NCOs. It has been civilians who think that they are in control of the unit.
Yeah, they are untouchable. Yeah.
And Washington, D.C. is an entire city of untouchables.
But you have to start with Congress, and Congress is not going to let you fire them. Congress is not going to allow you to fire them. Congress is not going to allow you to fire them.
No. I'm telling you, think about the political ads and think about the political ads. Okay, so now you go to 2026 and you say everybody who's coming up, President Trump for the last 2 years, he signed in. Well, here's the other question. Executive order, my guess would be probably pretty valid against hiring and firing. So if he says, okay, you're not going to do it, then I'm going to do it. Every single department in the federal government, every cabinet level department must reduce their workforce by 70%. You will now enforce the mandatory retirement age of 62. There will be no more waivers of 62. Anybody that has been in federal service for over 15 years, I want the pay to be frozen. No more raises after 15 years. I want that to be. Now, Congress would have to do some stuff, but if you even have a few in Republican, that would pass. Do you know how popular that would be?
Not at all.
Yes, it would. Dude, I saw something on Twitter. Where I think it was Elon Musk or somebody was like, Trump is threatening. It was a Democrat, and he said Trump is threatening to fire 20% of the workforce, and we have to stop him. And like all the comments were, "Stop it, dude! We're already voting for Trump. You don't need to tell us more." Like this guy was saying it's horrible, and all of the comments were like, "That's awesome." I guarantee you, there are so few policies. The only policies that might be more popular in this country would be a ban on certain federal taxes. Like if Trump came out and said no gasoline tax, that'd probably be more popular. But I don't want that. Honestly, I want a flat. I want a.
Oh my God!
I want a set federal tax on per gallon that fluctuates according to the gas prices, so that the gas price is always consistent, but that all that money goes to bridges and infrastructure and nothing else.
I can't imagine the chaos.
Oh, I can. I love it. Do you really think it would be chaos? Dude, think about it. Who would be mad? Who would be mad if Trump came out and said every single department has to cut 30% of their workforce? through attrition or performance reviews. So not first in, first out, actual performance reviews. So you now have to go back, like your NCOER, right? Your last 5 non-commissioned officer evaluation reports. You go back and your last 5 NCOERs were an average of 4.5. Your buddy, who has 2 more years than you, is at a 4.3. Guess who's getting fired? 4.3. Who's going to get mad at that? One guy. He's going to get mad, and fine. You know what? He's going to have to go find a job in the economy. And the American people, the accountant, okay? The accountant says, well, I don't want to do that. I want to stay in. Okay, great. You can stay in. We need Border Patrol guards. Are you willing to go through the 5-month course to go down? We understand you're 35 years old. You've been here for 10 years. You got hired when you were 25. You've been an accountant. You're physically fit enough, potentially. Your choice. You can either go through the academy and go be an agent, or you can be done. Your choice. You're an accountant. Go find another job.
I can't wait to see the comments on this.
I want it so badly. And do it with the military too. Get rid of these leaders who have been promoted because they're not good leaders, but they never make any choices. They pawn everything off on other people, and they take credit when good things happen. I've seen that, and we've both seen that too.
70% of this country is living paycheck to paycheck.
Mm-hmm. What happens if you reduce the 30% of the federal government? What do you think you can do then? So what can you do if you take off 30% of the paychecks of American workers, the hundreds of thousands of government workers?
So then what do you do with the government subsidies then? Because unemployment, I was going to say unemployment claims are going to go through the roof. Welfare claims.
But that's why you do it over the next 2 years. So you can do it over the next 2 years, and there's a difference with unemployment. Apparently, there's ways to do it, like getting laid off versus fire. There's ways to do it, but even short term. So here's the thing: short term unemployment. How long do you get unemployment? For 12 weeks, something like that.
I think it's like 12 weeks.
Okay, so it's better to take that short term hit and pay 12 weeks of unemployment to 30% of the federal workforce when you're not paying the rest of their salary. It's still cheaper because after 12 weeks, that money you're not spending on crappy employees. Now, look, I understand a lot of people will say, oh, no, you can't do that. The federal government wouldn't work. Want to bet? What happened during COVID? What percentage of people in the federal government were working during COVID? Under 50%. Do you remember any services going without? Where I was working military, I don't think I said where I was working military when COVID happened. It was one of the alphabet soups. I will say this. The manning went to 25%. We went to red level manning, which is the bare minimum, which was 25%. And at the end of it, I remember the commander of the center saying, I want to thank each and every one of you, because even as stretched thin as we were, we didn't miss a single deadline. We didn't miss anything. Now, again, okay, a little bit harder, 25%, 50%, cool. 75%. Dude, I am telling you right now, we are overloaded. We are bloated in.
Yeah, I'm not saying we can't do it. I'm just saying the shock to the system.
That's what we need.
Will be so great.
And it won't. And here's the other one that won't happen. We need the retirement age to go up. We need the retirement age to be tied closer to the life expectancy, but no politicians will do it. They just won't. If Trump got a super majority,
oh my God!
If Trump got a super majority, that's one I would love for him to do. But here's the thing, KJ. Like, you're saying nobody will do it. I agree. Nobody will do it because it's the third rail of politics. But you don't do it and say the retirement age is going up tomorrow. What you do is you say the retirement age is going from 65 to 66. What this 2024? It's going from 65 to 66 in 2030, and it's going from 26. It's going from 66 to 67 in 2034, and then it's going the next 4 years, and then it's going to be tied to 10 years life expectancy. So if life expectancy in the United States, average life expectancy is 78, every 5 years we're going to go up 1 year until we're at 10 years, and then it's always tied. So if suddenly we come out and there's a development in cancer treatment, right? There is a breakthrough in micro machine. What do they call nanobots? Nanotechnology. And because of nanotechnology, there is a jump of life expectancy of 10 years. And not just, I'm old and decrepit, but, I'm older and I'm not dying from cancer. But I'm actually feeling pretty good because of gene replacement therapy and all the other stuff that's been going on. So now I'm living to 88, and really I don't start feeling, 78 is the new 58. Okay. Then what you do is, and maybe it needs a constitutional amendment, but it goes up every 5 years. It goes up to 1 year. So it'll never be a bite. It'll never be like, oh my gosh, it went from 65 to 73 in 2 years. Now I have to work for 8 more years. No, it'll go up by 1 year every 4 or 5 years. And most of the people, it'll be like, well, I remember when my grandpa worked, he retired when he was 65, but I have to work until I'm 73 before I retire. That sucks.
I don't know, man. I don't necessarily agree with that, because you're already working. You're working 2/3 of your life as it is, right? You're working plus years.
But Social Security was never meant. But Social Security was never meant to be a retirement fund either.
Right.
It was supposed to be
if you're working and you're doing the right thing, you don't need Social Security. Social Security is supposed to be a supplement, basically a slush fund. It's not supposed to be, you're not supposed to live off of Social Security.
No. And if you want to say anybody that is over a certain amount doesn't get Social Security, I'm fine with that. Yeah. Even if they say, well, it's unfair, I've done everything else and I paid into it. Great, you paid into it. If all your investments fall apart and you need support, then you'll get it.
Yeah.
And the reason I say part of that is if you just look genetically, and I know this isn't true of everybody, but it's a pretty good example. Tom Cruise is older right now than Wilford Brimley was when he filmed Cocoon. Okay? The old diabetes, right? That's about how old Tom Cruise is right now. I'm only I think Wilford Brimley was 53 in Cocoon. I turned 52 in a couple of months.
Jeez.
So to say that we're at the same point health-wise as we were 40 years ago, that's why I think going up. And again, if I get to retire from the military, and if anybody says, well, you're only doing it because you're retiring from the military. Yeah, but I couldn't live off of my retirement paycheck from the military. Unless I wanted to live it, downgrade into a double wide, maybe living in South Dakota, which I guess, some people want to do, and that's fine for them. But I'd rather go teach and keep a certain level of income.
Right.
But there are certain things that, you say, like with cutting the workforce, they won't do it, and it'd be a shock to the system. If this country doesn't get a shock to the system, and I love Greg Easterbrook, and I understand we look at everything negative and things are going pretty well, and they are. But I think there's enough. We're sitting on enough of a powder keg when it comes to national debt to the GDP and the monies that. Now you want to go in and you want to audit the Fed, and you want to say, guess what? We're not going to pay the Fed this money because the Fed's is a privately owned bank, and we're done paying all this money. And what's the Fed going to do? Cut us off? Too bad. I'm all for that too, by the way. If, by the way, I have no inclination of undeading myself anytime soon.
You are an anarchist, sir.
I'm not an anarchist. I am a law-abiding constitutionalist. And as my understanding of the Constitution goes, we are living an unconstitutional country, and nobody. Now, don't get me wrong. Social Security is not a constitutional issue per se, but realistically, do you know? We've talked about this. Let's say if you remember, because we've done it a couple of times. What two services does the Constitution guarantee for the United States be provided by the government for private people?
We talked about this.
Yep. Twice. Mail. Yep.
What's the other one?
We both lived off it for years.
Dang it. Mail and military.
Military. Yep.
Military
U.S. United States Postal Office. The Constitution guarantees mail service, and it guarantees the defense of the country. All this other stuff, the Department of Energy, the Department of Education, the Homeland Security Department, ICE, urban development, all that, none of them are guaranteed by the Constitution. So if Trump came in with a 60 majority of Republicans and they said, that's it, they're all gone, they could do it. Will they? Hell no. But you're going to see, I've talked about this. When did Greece go through their big riots and everything? About 15 years ago, when they said, we are going to tighten our belts. We are going to go through, and the word is austerity, which means we are going to cut back on our spending. We have to stop giving all this money to people that are not working, basically, is what it was. These entitlement spendings. And America's entitlement spending, that's where the money, that's where our debt is. That's it. The trade deficit is different. All of our money is owed because we borrow against our own futures. And as long as you keep printing money, inflation goes up. As long as you continue this national debt. Now, do I think we'll get lucky? There's another one. I hope Trump, and he has enough wherewithal to say, you know what? We are going to go up and we are going to open Anwar, and we're going to pump all the oil we can out of Anwar province. It is there for the taking. We are going to absolutely devastate the oil prices because we're sick and tired of paying. And we're going to make gasoline $1.50 in the U.S. and we're going to sell the rest of our oil to the rest of the world at a premium, and we're going to start paying off our debt that way. And while we're doing that, we're going to rebuild. We need to build new, not only nuclear power plants. We need to build refineries. There hasn't been a new refinery built in the U.S. in something like 20 years. So we need to be able to convert that oil to gasoline. We need to build a pipeline, work with Canada so we can continue the pipeline, if possible, from Anwar or from wherever all the way down. But if we're not able to do the refineries, it's not going to help nearly as much anyway. But China's going to come to a real tipping point in the next few years as well, because they are spending so much money. The question is, are they going to be able to keep spending? And if they stop, then what happens? Okay. So the tariffs, I've seen some stuff on tariffs, the freak out by the left on tariffs. I've seen some economists, real basic economists, going, look, this is how tariffs work. The reason tariffs are good is because right now you basically can't sell Ford or Chevy in China because they just don't allow it. Meanwhile, the tariffs make it impossible, but they can ship all this stuff over here. So you've got to allow tariffs on, you're going to force Chinese tariffs and oh my gosh, the price. No, what it's going to do is it's going to open up the market, Chinese market, for American things and European market. And that's where it goes. So like you can revitalize, sure, bring chip manufacturing here. I would love for some more Intel chips to be built here.
I heard that the government has found some really cool lithium and quartz mines here
in
recently.
North Carolina. Yeah. Found.
Yeah. So
well,
maybe
domain,
that'll
we talked about that.
Maybe that'll free up some stuff. We don't know.
Well, it probably would, but ultimately the problem is, I think as Americans, if we don't stop doing these. Okay, again, I'm going to remind everybody, I'm a chaplain, religious background, all that stuff. If we don't stop living a wicked as a nation and doing these things that are wicked, and if you say, well, chaplain, what's your definition of wicked? Well, one example would be, how about we protect young girls in sports that are playing their sports for men? Don't let boys play against the girls. There's a reason you have weight classes. There's a reason you have boys sports and girls sports. Should trans not be allowed to compete? No, of course they should be able to compete against the boys. If you're a boy, you compete against the boys. If you're a transgender and you want to compete, you compete against the boys. I don't have any problem with that. Great. Men should not be allowed into the women's restrooms just because they say, I'm a woman. No, I want my kids protected. Now, I'm not going to go into certain things that other people might have problems with in terms of spirituality. You know, if you think homosexuality is wrong, don't practice homosexuality. Cool. You don't want somebody to have gay marriage? You don't think gay marriage is right? Don't get gay married. But if you do support gay marriage, don't say that somebody has to provide you with services if they don't want to. This is going to sound crazy. I believe in discrimination. And what I mean by that is I should have personal choice. What I mean, now let me be real clear about this. Discrimination means it doesn't mean what you're thinking, right? Okay. Discrimination means I should be able to make personal choices that benefit me if that's what I want to do. Okay. If I go out and buy let's say I invest in an apartment building that has 6 units. And I say, for whatever reason, I don't want to, the only people that I'm going to allow in my apartment building are straight, married, white men. Okay. Should I be allowed to do that? Yeah. And KJ, if you own that apartment building and you say the only people I'm going to rent to are Black transgender women, and I'm not going to anybody else, should you be allowed to do that? Yeah, it's your building.
That's a weird case, man.
Well, I'm just saying. I'm just making. I'm making.
It's like student housing. Yeah, it's one of them things. I get it. It's. I don't have an issue with it. I told you, I don't have an issue. Like I get it.
I think that the government needs to get out of the way of the average citizen. The average citizen should be able to do. Look, don't get me wrong. If I say only straight white married males can be in my apartment building, and you have people outside picketing me on the public sidewalk and shaming me, then that's on me. I've got to then decide, is this worth the bad publicity? If the units that I've rented now don't want to live there anymore because they don't like the chanting and the being yelled racist and bigots even though it's not their policy. Yeah, that's called freedom of speech, right? So that's where the balance is. But should I have the right to make that decision? Yes, as long as I'm not harming anybody else. And that's where it drives me bonkers that we've lost this idea in America that the government has the right to impose anything on me. And that's what's so frustrating is the government is supposed to protect me and then get out of the way. It's supposed to protect our most vulnerable citizens. It should not say, well, Elon Musk, you've made $50 billion, so we are going to take $40 billion from you and give it to these people who haven't done anything because you have too much. That's not what the government's supposed to be for.
In all fairness, we went down that whole discrimination rabbit hole as a nation, and it did not go well. People kind of took it to the extreme, and then it just did not. It did not end well for certain segments of our community.
Sure. And that's historical. I agree with you. But KJ, let me ask you
that's
this
one
right
of the
now.
things where the government kind of had to step in and be like, "Hey, I know we said we didn't mind, but yeah, now we gotta."
Well, and I think that so here's part of the problem. I don't think our country was in a place where I don't think we were at a place that we could do it at the time because of slavery and because of the closeness to slavery. And I think now we're at a point. So let me ask you, and this is kind of the gotcha question. Like if who's the Bob, the guy who owned the Bobcats and BET?
Johnson.
Real common.
Bob Johnson.
Bob Johnson. Okay. So let's say Bob Johnson said, I'm going to purchase, I have a deal in place to purchase 10,000 acres of land in the middle of Georgia, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I'm going to build a community. And we've talked about this a little bit. Build a community, and we are going to have, this is a Black community. It is Tulsa 2.0. I want to recreate the Black Wall Street, and I want Black opportunity. I want the dollars that come into this to be Black owned. I want the dollars to stay in this community as much as possible. I want to get to the point where the Black dollars in my community are turned over 15 or 20 times, like it is in some of the other communities. And if you polled that to the average Black person in America and said, should he be able to do that? You'd probably get like a 97, 98%. Yes, absolutely, he should be able to, right? But if you had Elon Musk do the same thing and say, but it was only a community for white people, it'd never fly, right?
Bullshit, it'll never fly. You got neighborhoods like that.
It would never be allowed. No. If he came out and said, no, wait, dude, the federal government right now would never allow it. If he said, I'm going to build a community of 10,000 units and only white people can live in this community, it would the first shovel of dirt wouldn't get turned. It would be the ACLU, the NAACP.
So I'm gonna take it you've never been to the Upper East Side of Jersey.
That's money, dude.
Or Jewish New York or any of those places, because I hate to break it to you, brother. There's neighborhoods like that all over the nation. It's just
and how do you control it? It's controlled privately though. It's not official.
But what I'm saying, it's not official, but what I'm saying, they're just called neighborhoods. It's not like
good friend of mine, when we were in Conroe, Texas, he was actually Woodlands, right next door. He was shown houses. He was moving in. He was shown all these houses in this one little neighborhood. And he's like, oh, that's cool. And then he's looking around, and after he bought, he started looking at all his neighbors. He's like, they all look like me. Wait, you're Filipino, and you're Filipino, and you're Filipino.
Yep.
Wait a minute. The realtor was doing that.
Right. Yeah. Did they just move me into a Filipino neighborhood? And then
they absolutely did. They only showed him certain houses in certain neighborhoods, right? So yes, you have that. But again, that's well, sure. And so, but here's my question though. Again, I look at it and go, you're seeing that happening right now on college campuses where they say this student union building, this space is only for our people of color, our students of color. Okay. And it's accepted. But then if you were to turn around and say this student union is only for our Caucasian students, that would be, oh my gosh, the pickets would come out, the protesters, they'd go in and they'd probably beat up the chancellor of the school, the president, and all that. And I go back to this. I say, if you change the word white to a different skin tone and it suddenly becomes racist, it was always racist. Okay. So I just look at it and say, look, government needs to get out of the way. And the reason it didn't work, what you were talking about, you said historically it turned out bad for you. It was because the people that were in power, the white people that were in power, didn't leave the black community alone, including the federal government. If you think Tulsa wasn't given a little wink, wink, nudge, nudge, hey,
no. Yeah,
you
we
go do what you got to
know.
do.
Yeah, no, we absolutely know. Yeah,
my dude, the LDS, the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints moved from New York to Ohio and then down to Missouri. They got expelled from Missouri in 1840s. There was a signature by law. Governor Boggs signed a declaration that any members of the Mormon Church that were in the state of Missouri after this date, it would be legal to execute them. It was called the extermination order. Okay.
You got treated.
Now, and you can say, hey, the black community had that the whole time without it being an order. And I agree. Right. So if you go back and you look, though, and you say, how many communities have had something like that to them? But once the LDS Church went to Salt Lake, and even then they weren't left alone. They were very much like Tulsa. If Tulsa had just been left alone, Tulsa would probably be an incredible community for black people to live in now. It got decimated because, again, white people didn't leave them alone. If non-LDS people had just left Salt Lake alone, you should go look up the state of Deseret sometime, what the LDS Church tried to claim as far as land goes. We had LA and Vegas and Phoenix and all of it. And it eventually got whittled down politically because they're like, we don't like these Mormon people.
Yeah.
And they believe in polygamy and stuff like that. And so I think that this country, I was just talking with one of my daughter's friends. And I think this is going to be a good soundbite. So remember this at 2:36.
2:36, yeah.
I asked my daughter and her friend, and my two younger, my 11-year-old and her friend who were over. I said, what does the Bill of Rights do? And the two younger ones, oh, that's in the Constitution. I said, it is. What does it do? And they said, it gives you rights. I said, well, are you sure? Does it give you rights? Where do rights come from? And they were a little bit confused by that. I said, look, here's what the Bill of Rights did, and here's what the Constitution does. You have natural rights. You have the right to free speech. You have the right to religion. These are rights that you have. Nobody gave them to you. And what the Bill of Rights did and the Constitution does, it doesn't give you those rights. It keeps the government from taking those rights away from you.
Yep.
Right? That was the beauty of the Constitution. Well, we're not at that point anymore. The separation of church and state, people don't understand. That was to protect the churches, not the state.
Yep.
And so we are going to have at some point a wake up, and it's going to be, and we've talked about this, the Civil War that's coming eventually, or the battle, or whatever, the reckoning, let's say. I think it's going to become when we have to take austerity into account, and people are going to go, what do you mean I don't get my welfare check? What do you mean I don't get my food stamps?
Absolutely.
And that's going to be white, black, brown, yellow, red, green, purple, blue. So there's my last thought. So Trump, Harris, we've got 2 more shows of this. It's going to be fun. It's going to be more fun with the Dodgers and Yankees because the Dodgers just went up 9-4 in the bottom of the 8th. 3 more outs, and they have a man on third.
Let's go.
Let's go Dodgers, Yankees. It's gonna be fun.
Go.
Dodgers breaking the hearts of the Yankees in New York 2 series in a row and claiming their first full-on championship since 1988, even though the bubble was a championship, and rubbing in the faces of the Trastros who cheated their ways to at least 1. So
let's go Doyers. Let's go.
KG is an adopted Doyers fan. Los Doyers.
I am.
Are you going to stay with us through the Yankee series?
I am. Yes.
Okay.
I am. Yes. I am Team Dodgers all the way through because there's nothing I hate worse than the Yankees. And if the Dodgers can beat them, even better. Because I would hate
your boy Freddie Freeman.
Yep. And I would hate to have to root for a division rival to win a World Series. So it's a win-win for me.
The bullpen would have to. They're down by 5, and I don't think the Dodgers bullpen has given up 5 in this entire series. So
period. No, you guys are good.
Yeah.
All right, my brother. Let's call
2
it.
more weeks. 2 more weeks, and we don't have to put up with this crap.
The chaos is just beginning, man. Because then now we get to talk about all the conspiracy theories about who cheated, what, and why, and that's when all the fun stuff comes. Because then we got all the way up until Inauguration Day to figure out the lawsuits and
And then at some point, we're gonna have to figure out what happens when President-elect Trump has been assassinated and who takes over.
I'm telling you, Vance, man. I'm telling you, by the end of 2025, President Vance and his cabinet, it's gonna be.
Okay, so we're marking it before December 21st. I'll tell you, we've talked about this before. I thought for sure Obama was
90 days.
I thought for sure Obama would not make his
90 days. They've already tried 3 times, and the dude hadn't even been elected yet, man.
Really? I know about 2. What was the 3rd?
No, remember they arrested the dude before he could even try to make the last attempt.
Oh, we're counting the Iranian.
Yeah, they listen. Trump winning is the deep state's worst nightmare. I just don't make me grab my tinfoil hat. I'm telling you, Vance.
No. Dude, I'm telling you, there's a reason that there are so many people that were former Republicans that are pushing Harris. They don't want Trump to win because they know what they've done.
Dick Cheney is Dick Cheney is backing a Democratic nominee.
If that doesn't let you know there is a new world order, they can come out and tell you that there's a new order.
Even if I wasn't a conspiracy theorist, something would be wait a minute. That dog just don't hunt. You know what I mean?
Dick Cheney's what? Liz Cheney you kind of get.
Yeah.
Dick Cheney? And the fact that the Democrats, when Dick Cheney came out and said, I'm supporting Kamala Harris, the fact that the Democrats didn't come out and say, thank you, no thanks.
Nobody had
it, but no.
Yeah.
You go. We appreciate your vote, and that's it.
Nobody.
Wouldn't you at least trusted the Dems a little bit more if they've done that?
That's what I'm saying. Nobody questioned it. Nobody second guessed it, or even hey, why? Everybody was yeah, that's great. This is great news. Nobody.
And then Trump now has been going out with they asked the guy that you played the clip. He said, look, 97% of my they supported me. I don't agree with the vice president. I don't that 3%, what were the 3%? They were the ones that it's not because they are worried about Trump's unstable. They're worried that Trump is unstable enough to go after them.
And I keep telling them.
And I don't think that's tin hat. I just think that's how it is.
I'll keep telling them he's uncontrollable. And that's not good for
in all the best and worst days. All the best and worst ways.
That's it. All right, my brother. Let's call it.
All right.
I will see you next week so we can count this thing down.
I look forward to the
out of here, y'all. Take care.